After being married for 38 years, raising 3 married children, and having 5 precious grandchildren, she's pulling this nonsense. I've worked hard to become debt-free and be just 2 years away from retirement. She claimed she was in Arizona for a mandatory educators conference, but I dropped her off at the airport, planning to pick her up on Thursday. A co-worker in Vegas for a PBR event sent me a photo of her in a casino with our family doctor. Now, it's Christmas, and all the kids are coming over. I was looking forward to hunting with my son and grandsons. I'm not sure if I should confront her now or act normal until after Christmas to avoid ruining it for the kids. Maybe picking her up and pretending everything is fine will give me a chance to gather more evidence. It's tough, but I don't want to devastate my children during this time of year. This woman sang a solo in church on Sunday and caught a flight on Monday to spend the week with the doctor. I've never suspected her of cheating in our 40-year relationship. I never have either. It seems like the secure life I thought I had is over. Thankfully, my parents aren't around to witness this. I might just catch a flight tomorrow and find them using different names. The frustrating part is both my brothers are gone, and there's no one I can talk to about this. Maybe a pastor. Who knows? She might be involved with him too. Update. I took some time off work and am currently at my camp. My wife's sister picked her up from the airport on Thursday evening. I hired a lawyer and a PI recommended by the lawyer. I haven't talked to my wife about the Vegas pictures, and the only people who know are my lawyers and Reddit. My wife thinks I'm at the camp because a big buck I've been hunting for a couple of seasons is back on my plot cameras. We've had phone and text conversations, just casual. She doesn't suspect that I'm investigating her trip or life. We end every conversation with, "I love you," as usual. I've followed my lawyer's advice about our finances. The PI confirmed an affair between my wife and the doctor for over a year. We'll find out more details later. She didn't attend a conference in Arizona. She spent every night in Vegas. I plan to confront her when the PI completes his investigation. We believe they will meet. Since I'm out of town, I intend to give them ample opportunity to do so before I come home. I wasn't aware that most affairs occur in a demographic group of 55 to 70 years old. I thought we had a very good marriage. She seemed content with where we were in life, and I believe she loved me as I did her. I loved her completely. Everything seemed so surreal. Each day has brought things to light I never would have imagined. I guess at this point, I want to know how many years of my life have been a lie and why the life we had was not enough. Why was I not enough? Why were our children and grandchildren not enough? She is a beautiful woman. I always thought it was inside and out. I'm going to divorce her. There's no path to reconciliation. I'm not sure how scorched earth I will go. I'm very angry at both of them. I will confront the doctor and his wife together. I can't say today exactly what else I will do. I think I have to take it one step at a time, and the first step is to learn as much as I can before they have a chance to collaborate their stories. He may just be the latest in line. Update. I'll head home tonight. My 84-year-old mother-in-law has been a widow for 12 years and will be heartbroken by my wife's cheating. Tomorrow night, my wife's 3 married sisters, all in long-term marriages, are coming over for Christmas. Since my father-in-law passed away, I've been grilling steaks for them every Christmas. If I skip going home, it'll raise suspicions for my wife. I thought about faking the flu and staying put, but I've decided to go home. Missing this would affect the plan to return with my son and grandsons. I haven't confronted her yet. We've talked a bit, mostly through text. I'm sure she suspects nothing now. I've given the gate and house code to the PI. He, along with an IT guy, accessed her desktop while she was at work. Somehow, he's now getting her texts from iCloud. I don't fully understand how he pulled it off, but he did. I'm not in touch with the PI or lawyer daily. I don't know what he's found so far. I've got a meeting with him and my attorney next Friday morning, a week from tomorrow. It's tough for me to control my anger with what I know now. I think I'm spending unnecessarily on the PI, but my attorney wants me to keep gathering evidence until I confront her. I plan to get the info next week and hopefully stop paying him. I usually go to camp the week before and after Christmas. She won't suspect a thing. If I can hold off exploding when I get home, I'll leave again on Sunday. My son and grandsons are scheduled to hunt the week before Christmas, our yearly tradition. I haven't seen her in almost 2 weeks. I never imagined my love for her could turn into so much hatred and contempt. My plan is to wrap up the evidence I get next Friday after Christmas lunch. We'll open gifts with our children and grandchildren. I'll let her open hers last, ask her to show our children, take her phone, and leave. My next stop will be the doctor's house, where I'll deliver the evidence to his wife and family and then file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Update. I got back from the camp last Thursday evening, and she was home. I was worn out from lack of sleep, so our conversation was brief. On Friday night, we had a Christmas gathering at our place with her mother and 3 sisters. I managed to pull it off without her getting suspicious. I spent most of Saturday away, and after church on Sunday, I went back to my camp. My son and grandson joined me there on Sunday night. We hunted all week, and now I'm back home. We don't have any plans for tomorrow. Our kids and grandkids will go to church with us on Sunday and then come over here for Christmas lunch and gifts. I've surprised everyone by keeping my emotions in check, given the tough situation I'm facing. I've reconsidered how I'll reveal her affair. I won't confront her on Christmas. I've scheduled a meeting with my attorney on Tuesday morning. I plan to gather all the evidence he and the investigator have collected, along with the divorce papers he's prepared. I want to have my son and 2 daughters come to our house for a family meeting on Tuesday night to expose her affair and confront her. At this point, I'm not sure how I'll confront the doctor and his wife. My goal is to damage his reputation and career using any means available to me. Update. We got through Christmas with my kids, grandkids, and in-laws. On Monday morning, I talked to my pastor about the situation. He arranged a meeting between me and the affair partner's wife. We decided to confront our spouses on Monday night, making them write detailed letters about the affair. I made my wife write the letter and didn't let her explain anything to me. I told her I knew she was in Vegas and who she was with. I instructed her to include all details, and if there was any contradiction to the evidence I had, reconciliation was off the table. On Tuesday morning, I met with my attorney, got the collected evidence, and received advice. In the afternoon, I met with the affair partner's employer, demanding his termination. He got fired today. On Tuesday night, my children came, and their mother confessed to them. They're shocked and hurt. My wife went home with my daughter and is still there. I'm figuring out my next move. Reconciliation seems unlikely. I'll decide what to do with the affair partner once I'm clear about my own marriage. She admitted everything and answered every specific detail I asked for in her letter. Update. Did I question her why? Certainly, I asked why. She couldn't explain why. She told me and our kids that she felt like independent, aware she was ruining her life, but unable to stop. She told our children that they shouldn't have to endure disappointment or embarrassment due to their mother's immorality, expressing they didn't deserve the shame of a fancy woman. I won't share all she said because I'm unsure if any of it is true. How did she behave? She's completely shattered, remorseful, and pleading for forgiveness from me and the kids. She comprehends the gravity of her actions. How did my children react? One told her, and the other 2 agreed. It would have been easier to bury you than deal with this. Do I want to stay married? Yes, I do. That's why I never cheated on my wife. Have I met the affair partner's wife and told her? Yes, we've met twice and communicated by phone and text several times. Do I not care for his family by having him fired? I care more for the next patient's wife. He's inappropriate at 7 a.m. I'm considering divorcing her. I'm not sure. Have I sought therapy? Not at this time. What I need is for this to go away. If you know anyone who can make that happen, I'll do therapy. Every situation is unique in its elements, personalities, and complexities. I could handle it differently at a different time in my life. Every nuance I'm dealing with has been a great source of strength. One Redditor has been a valuable source of wisdom, knowledge, and encouragement. He has helped me more than I can express gratitude for. It's not like I got to spend quality time with my wife. She's not here. Why is she at my daughter's and not my in-laws? Her dad is dead, and her mom is 84. I didn't want her mom to deal with this. She's at my baby daughter and her husband's home. They have no children yet, and the chance of her turning any of my children against me doesn't exist. This is especially true of this little Spitfire, 10 years younger than her sister and 12 years younger than her brother. She spent more hours in a deer stand, bay boat, and office truck with me than we could count. She won't let her say true things that are bad about me, let alone lies. Update. Weekend plans. I had a brother who was 14 years younger than me. He was a college professor living 8.5 hours away from our hometown. Unfortunately, he passed away in a motorcycle accident in 2017. He left behind a daughter, now 24, who is married and resides in a different state than her mother. However, she's brought her new baby home to visit her mother and in-laws. My sister-in-law hasn't remarried. I called my sister-in-law last night to find out when my niece was heading back home. Turns out, she's staying this week with her husband's parents, about 40 minutes from my sister-in-law. Since my children are smothering me, I've decided to go on a road trip. I'll be meeting my great-nephew, named after my brother and me. I'll arrive late tonight. I asked her to reserve a hotel room, but she insisted, saying, "There's no way in hell that's happening. You'll stay here, and we'll watch movies and eat ice cream." I don't know when I'm coming back. I haven't spoken to or seen my wife since Tuesday night. I blocked her number. I called my son and informed him of my destination, asking him to go to the office and lease a rental property owned by my company. It's a renovated house intended for sale. I instructed him to let his mother know to collect what she needs from our house and move into the rental. She should pay rent to my son, who will then pay my company. I'm getting a new keypad installed on the gate and doors of my house on Wednesday, so she needs to get her stuff now. Update. Had a good weekend. When I called my sister-in-law, I let her know I'd be coming alone to see my niece and her new baby. She asked why my wife isn't coming, and I just said there are some issues, and I'll let you know when I get there. I got here around midnight, and she had just taken a hot pound cake out of the oven, the best thing I've eaten in weeks. I shared all the details of my saga with her. I teared up a few times, but as I went through it with her, I broke down and wept. She was very supportive and wept with me, stroking my bruised ego, and I guess I felt better after we talked. I went to bed around 3 o'clock yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, she cooked bacon and eggs for breakfast, and as I ate, told me that I may make the rules and run the show back home, but not at her house. She then proceeded to tell me my schedule. At 1 o'clock, I had a haircut appointment, overdue since this all happened, and then we were going to Dillard's to buy clothes to fit me. I've lost over 30 pounds in 3 weeks. After the haircut, we were going to a friend's house for a bonfire and fireworks last night. I was also going with her to church today, and she was visiting her parents this afternoon. She's cooking supper tonight, and her daughter and son-in-law are coming to eat and visit. Her son-in-law is taking me deer hunting tomorrow on an 8,000-acre timber co-lease he's part of. He's off all week, and if I want, I can stay and hunt all week. She will wash my clothes and feed me. We won't talk about my problems again until I leave to go home. So, I did what I was told to do. She went with me to her regular salon, and on the way there said, "I'm going to use you to have some fun. When I introduce you, I'm going to give them your first and middle name." I asked her, "What the hell?" And she just laughed and said, "Just play along. I'm going to give these witches something to talk about." My middle name is my mother's maiden name. That's how she introduced me to her hairstylist. During my haircut, she asked where I was from, and I said, "Detroit." There's no way my accent will allow me to be from Detroit. My sister-in-law never missed a beat and said, "He's a logger." Next stop, Dillard's. I haven't shopped for anything in years. Ended up buying 3 new pants, 4 shirts, 2 pairs of shoes, a tie, and believe it or not, a $75 tie and a heart-shaped marked suit. According to her, it's the only suit my brother would wear. I didn't know he was so particular about his clothes. Also bought a new belt. The suit had to be hemmed, and she convinced them to do it while we waited. On the way home, she told me I'd be her date for the party in church, so I was. She told me to look at her like I looked at a new pistol so they would buy it. I went along with her except at the party. I was from Atlanta, sold road graders, and had been married and divorced 4 times. At church this morning, we got there late and left early because she doesn't want to be struck by lightning for lying in church. She sat right up under me, held my hand, and we walked out. I've had a good time looking like Dumb and Dumber with my 46-year-old sister-in-law. She has cut up the whole time, and I have laughed, genuinely laughed. I haven't done that for 3 weeks. I'm going to hunt tomorrow and may stay until Wednesday, but I have to be at work Friday. I've talked to my son a couple of times. He thinks they need to try to get her some medical help. She evidently is not saying much and stays in her bedroom at my daughter's house most of the time. Her phone is dead, and he and my other daughter communicate with her through my youngest. The affair partner's wife sent her a long text in which she called her everything but a child of God. I haven't communicated with my wife. She asked where I was and told my daughter I would never be able to forgive her, and she didn't blame me for not forgiving. My son said she looks like passing away. I still see no path to reconciliation. However, I am not going to file for divorce until I am completely sure. Some have said divorce and reconcile. If I change my mind, that seems like a waste of time, energy, and money. When I decide to divorce, it will be final. I also am not going to sue a fair partner if I don't divorce. If I do divorce, I will sue him to defray what the divorce settlement will be otherwise. I don't want his money. I have come to terms with the fact that this is not going to end soon and that my life will never be the same. Update. My wife is in the hospital. Yesterday morning, my daughter took her to the ER because she was dehydrated. Tests revealed that her kidney function wasn't normal, and she was showing signs of confusion, leading to her admission. They started her on a drip, and today they will conduct more labs. A psych evaluation has been ordered, and they anticipate her stay in the hospital to last most of the week. My son informed her sisters about her hospitalization, mentioning that I was out of town. As far as I know, her sisters and mother are unaware of her affair. I plan to sit down with her mother and oldest sister this weekend. In hindsight, I should have done this last Friday before leaving town. I'm still at my sister-in-law's house. I went hunting yesterday, but it is raining today, so I chose not to go out again this morning. Last night's dinner included fried steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, homemade biscuits, apple cobbler, and ice cream. This morning my sister-in-law has a few things to do, but instructed me to be dressed and ready to go rambling when she returns. I suppose I'm glad to be here. I don't feel like talking to my friends just yet, and being at work isn't appealing. I have my laptop and phone, and an assistant co-worker who has been with me for 25 years, so business is being conducted as usual. He knows about the affair because he was the one who made me aware of the Vegas trip. Regarding her sister, I called her and provided a basic summary of the affair and the circumstances leading to my wife's hospitalization. She was genuinely shocked, apologetic, and sympathetic. My mother-in-law is leaving tomorrow on a trip with 3 other widows she is friends with. My daughters, part of what they jokingly call the BHH gang, blue-haired hoe, enjoy taking bus tours. She said she was not going to tell her about the affair or the psych evaluation, just that my wife's condition didn't seem serious enough for me to cut short my trips. She mentioned that I didn't seem myself and looked troubled when they left my house. The sisters are going to assist my daughters and daughter-in-law during the hospital stay, and one of them will take her home with them until she is able to move from our house. I called my youngest daughter and told her to go by the office and get a check. Go cash it, buy a card, and take it by her grandmother's house. I have a name stamp at the office she can sign the card with to put a note in it to enjoy her trip and that I loved her. Update. Regarding my wife's health, her kidney function has shown improvement. However, based on a psychiatric evaluation, she has experienced a psychotic break. She's disoriented, believing that we were in a car accident, and I am now deceased. She's distressed, thinking my funeral happened without her, and she's expressing her emotions in a way that's difficult to comprehend. Tonight, they transferred her to a hospital specialized in mental trauma, expecting a full recovery in the coming days or weeks. However, she must have no contact with anyone for the next 10 days. My middle daughter will be the family contact for afternoon updates until she can have visitors. This situation is an unbelievable and unnecessary mess. I'm still at Sparky's place, and she arranged a 9:30 a.m. appointment with a psychiatrist she had seen for 2 years after my brother's tragic passing away. After a shower, when putting on my pajamas to go back downstairs, I realized that all my perfectly good white Fruit of the Loom boxer shorts were missing. They had been replaced by boxer briefs from Duluth Trading Company with a band that says, "Go Buck Undressed." The colors include red, black, neon blue, maroon, and dark and light gray. When I questioned her about it, she humorously said the 60s called and wanted those ugly drawers back. She added that the boys need to breathe. Update. I got back home on Thursday night after seeing a psychologist my sister-in-law recommended, who she had used after my brother's passing away. The meeting didn't go well. To be fair to the counselor, I wasn't keen on going, and I was pretty angry at the time. Discussing the details of my wife's affair made me very uncomfortable. I had to attend a work meeting on Friday for a contract addendum that needed my presence and signature on a modified agreement. I met with my children in the afternoon to update them on their mother's condition. The clinician asked us to submit a plan for her discharge, and I stood firm that she couldn't return home but should move into a rental property. Today's status report showed encouraging progress over the weekend. They are also planning family sessions with her as early as the end of this week. I made it clear to my children that I wouldn't be attending any family sessions. I told them her recovery wasn't my responsibility and I wouldn't be part of it. While they may not fully agree, that's the stance I'm taking. However, I did commit to not filing for divorce in the next 6 months. I attended church on Sunday, sitting in our usual spot of nearly 40 years. None of the affair partner's family was there, and I didn't bother asking my pastor about them because I don't care. This afternoon, I met with a psychologist recommended by my pastor. It was a productive meeting for me. He's 74 years old, working part-time from an office behind his home. He outlined the goals he'd like to achieve with me, and I agreed to follow the steps. I feel comfortable with him and agreed to meet weekly. An investigator from the State Medical Board Examiner's Office is coming to my office on Wednesday morning. This follows a complaint filed by the attorney against the affair partner. I'll have to give a sworn deposition about the affair. I resent every step I have to take because of her affair. While I don't think she's faking a mental breakdown, I find it challenging to be sympathetic. Update. My wife is still undergoing treatment and is committed to staying there for 30 days. She's improving, but my children agree that she needs more in-house treatment. I haven't directly communicated with her since December 27th. To cover the costs, she withdrew from her retirement account. I haven't had a sit-down with my mother-in-law. She and her daughters have visited my wife. I texted her that I would talk when I felt ready. She has called to check on me multiple times. While she's sad, she remains strong. There's no news about the affair partner, but his house is up for sale. I'm unsure if they are separated or still together. I've attended counseling twice and am actually looking forward to my Monday meeting. It's been beneficial for me. The affair is widely known and being gossiped about. Despite being thoroughly embarrassed by her actions, I continue to attend church and hold my head up. My children and grandchildren are doing well. Keeping busy at work and managing my son's re-election campaign has helped me stay occupied. Lately, I've noticed more attractive women than ever before. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, just something I've become more aware of. I believe that covers everything. Update. My wife left the hospital on Tuesday and headed to a rental property owned by my company. Despite being an older house, it has undergone a complete renovation from the stud walls. I still haven't spoken to her since December 27th. She penned 2 letters expressing remorse and seeking my forgiveness. I haven't replied, except for telling my children that I've read them and will reach out when I'm ready to discuss the past and the future. We have a woman who has been a housekeeper for my wife for over 20 years. I sent people to my house, and following my daughter and the housekeeper's guidance, they moved a bedroom suite and other essentials to create a comfortable space for my wife. They bought new furniture, and everything has been ready for her release from the hospital for over a week. She arranged to employ the housekeeper every day for as long as needed, providing her with a driver and sitter for the nights her sisters stay as long as required. I had dinner with my mother-in-law at her home on Tuesday night and explained my stance. She was very understanding and expressed her support for me. According to my son, his grandmother visited his mother last night and wasn't very sympathetic. Apparently, she didn't spare my wife's feelings with what she told her. This is the first time they discussed my wife's betrayal. I'm going to Sparky's tomorrow. She has tickets for a concert on Saturday night. Initially, she and a friend were going, but the friend can't make it due to a coworker's funeral on Saturday. We'll fly to North Carolina tomorrow afternoon and return Sunday afternoon. I'm looking forward to something different, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. I'm actually enjoying counseling and look forward to the weekly sessions. It seems to help me compartmentalize the pieces of my life.
It all began early in our marriage when Sheila and I were still learning to live together. We were two young people trying to balance love and daily life. The early years brought small victories, buying our first home, raising two energetic boys, and settling into suburban routines. But over time, cracks appeared in our seemingly perfect life. Sheila was always the adventurous one, pushing boundaries, while I preferred routine. As our differences grew, we drifted apart. I focused on work and fatherhood, while Sheila sought excitement elsewhere, pulling away from the life we had built. One lazy Sunday, I wandered through Home Depot, passing time. Part of me knew I should be at church, but browsing tools seemed more appealing. I had no pressing needs, but it was a better way to spend the day than golf. As I wandered, I ran into Barry Bartell, a family friend. We weren't very close, but we could easily chat over coffee. Coincidentally, his wife, Greta, and my wife, Sheila, were leaving the next morning for a week-long Caribbean cruise. Since Barry couldn't get time off work, Sheila insisted I stay home with the kids while she and Greta enjoyed their vacation. She said I'd just be a third wheel and that they'd save money sharing a cabin. I wasn't thrilled, but didn't want to argue. You can probably guess where this is going. Barry and I ended up in the pest control aisle. "Sorry you couldn't join the cruise," Barry said, sounding genuinely disappointed, but he was the one who couldn't get time off. What was he expecting? "I've already taken the week off. I'll use the time to paint the kitchen while they're away," I replied. "Sheila told me you couldn't get off work." "I work for my father, John. I can leave whenever I want. I was ready to go when Greta told me you couldn't make it," Barry explained. We stood in awkward silence until an elderly man on a motorized cart grumbled at us to move. "Want to grab some coffee?" I asked. "Sure," Barry agreed. We spent 2 hours at McDonald's, quickly realizing our wives had planned a cruise without us. The big question was why. We both avoided the obvious until we couldn't anymore. Eventually, I broke the silence. "So, Barry, are they bringing along two men or planning to meet some strangers?" I asked, suspicion in my voice. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Want a Danish?" he offered, trying to change the subject. He wasn't avoiding the question, just stalling. We grabbed fresh buns and more coffee. "I can't imagine Greta hooking up with a stranger, so it must be a prearranged meeting," Barry speculated. "I hate to admit it, but I agree. Why would they go on a trip like this? Wouldn't it be easier to find someone local?" "Maybe," I responded, still processing. "I've always trusted Sheila and never thought she'd be involved with someone else. Why would two mothers with school-age kids even consider this?" We sipped our coffee in silence, staring out the window. "John, it's probably a couple of guys from work. Sheila and Greta both work at International Casualty Insurance," Barry suggested. His explanation made sense. "Is there anything we can do to stop this? If they're comfortable enough to go on a cruise with these men, we might already be too late." "You think they've already been unfaithful?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I hate to say it, but I'm starting to think so," Barry admitted. He got up, irritated after paying 27 cents for a glass of ice. We added ice to our scalding coffee and sat quietly. Now that I think about it, Greta's been working late a lot recently, evenings and weekends. I hadn't thought much of it before, but now I'm seeing your point. I won't stop Sheila from going, but I'm not just going to sit here and do nothing either. I finished my Danish pastry and tossed the remaining coffee into the trash. "Barry, let's meet here tomorrow, right after the girls leave for the airport. We've got some planning to do. Make sure not to say anything to Greta that might tip her off." Barry gave me a thumbs up as I headed out the door. It seemed like he planned to stay and finish his coffee. He didn't look happy. When I got home, everything seemed normal. Our two sons, Todd, 9, and Jason, 10, were glued to the TV. I thought they should be outside, but I had long given up on that battle. Sheila was acting just like she always did. I sat down with the newspaper while she prepared a late lunch. I expected her to talk about her trip, but she seemed to avoid the topic altogether. Naturally, that was suspicious. After lunch, I finally took the boys outside to play some soccer, while Sheila was busy packing inside. She insisted on getting everything ready so she could leave without any issues in the morning. I smiled, glancing back at the house now and then. How had I missed this? How foolish had I been? Why didn't I see it sooner? "Todd, Jason, I'll be painting the house next week while your mom's away. How about you spend the week with Grandma and Grandpa Connor?" I didn't wait for a reply. They both ran straight into the house, and within 10 minutes, they were packed. My parents had a farm 20 miles out of town, and they had horses. It wasn't a tough sell. Sheila grumbled a bit, but didn't put up much of a fight. When I got back, dinner was already on the table. After freshening up, Sheila went to take a shower. Naturally, this gave me the chance to quickly check her bags. My suspicions were confirmed when I noticed three things. First, most of her sleepwear seemed out of place, especially if she was just with Greta. The second red flag was a new orange bikini hidden in her makeup bag. But the most alarming find was the 210 packs of rubbers tucked away in a case. I couldn't help but wonder why my wife would need rubbers on a cruise. I scolded myself for even having such thoughts. Sheila mentioned wanting a good night's sleep before the trip, while I had decided to binge-watch some Steven Seagal movies. Unfortunately, I didn't have international coverage on my cell phone, unlike Sheila, who had a work phone with international coverage. Though I couldn't call her, she promised to check in daily, or if anything came up. I reassured her not to worry, explaining that if I didn't answer, I might be at my parents' house with the boys or busy painting. My words seemed to comfort her as I dropped Sheila off. Greta was already at the terminal, smiling and waving at me. As Sheila joined her, I looked forward to seeing Barry. After parking, Barry walked up with a couple of cups of coffee, complaining about the ice. "John, please tell me you have some good news," Barry pleaded. I could only shake my head no. Greta packed 2 new dresses and lingerie that most women would find embarrassing. Worse, I found a new bikini and a large number of rubbers. It didn't even cross my mind to search her makeup bag. I'm not sure whether I'm relieved I didn't find anything else or regret not searching more thoroughly. Barry and I spent the next 20 minutes commiserating over our situation. Once we finished our coffee, it was time to focus on business. Our first stop was International Casualty Insurance, where we informed the receptionist that we needed to speak with Kermit Templeton, the head of Human Resources. Barry and I had known Kermit since high school. We weren't close, but we got along. "Oh no," Kermit didn't look thrilled to see us. "Can you close the door?" Barry and I settled into some uncomfortable chairs. "Do you know why we're here, Kermit?" "I have a pretty good idea," he replied, clearly not happy about it. Barry and I exchanged a smile, but Kermit remained serious. "We were hoping you could give us the number of employees on vacation this week." "Is that a question?" Kermit asked, his tone turning stern. Our smiles quickly faded. Kermit's demeanor shifted as he typed on his computer. He sighed and mentioned Sheila and Greta. 14 employees are on vacation." "Can you print out a list for us?" Barry asked. "No, but I can give you the information you need," Kermit replied, typing a few more commands. The printer next to him whirred to life. Handing us 2 sheets of paper, he watched our reactions. The pages contained details about Clayton Mankiw and Calvin Bostic. Barry and I quickly skimmed the documents and then looked at Kermit. "These 2 are on the same cruise as Greta and Sheila. We don't need to see the rest of the list. Was that what you were asking?" "Out of curiosity, do you know the pairings?" Barry asked. Kermit placed a photo of Calvin in front of Barry and another in front of me. He seemed reluctant to say more. "Does anyone else know about this?" I pressed. Kermit hesitated, but eventually admitted, "Everyone knows. I thought the company had a policy against this." "Yes, but it only applies if there's a complaint." "And then what? Usually just a warning," Kermit explained. "And if we push for more?" Barry asked, leaning in. "You're not planning to make this difficult for me, are you?" Kermit asked, sounding worried. Barry and I exchanged a look. No words were needed, but it was clear we were on the same page. "Kermit, if those 4 are still employed here next week, we will take legal action. We don't have all the details yet, but it's inevitable. We'll arrange for our attorney to contact you or your legal department, whichever you prefer," Barry stated firmly. "Any inquiries? I'm sorry about this situation." We didn't take any action since the relationship was consensual. No one was coerced or forced into anything. While we're not sure about the extent of the relationship, we acknowledge its existence. "We didn't act because no one had filed a complaint until now," Kermit explained, trying to cover his tracks. "Yes, Kermit, it's official. You fire all 4 of them and we won't take legal action. But if nothing is done, you should expect a lawsuit, and it will be very public," I stated, making our position clear. Barry and I stood firm before leaving. We shook hands with Kermit as we walked out through the main entrance. Barry glanced at me. "So what's our next move?" "I think we should see the lawyer first. Then we can grab lunch and head to the local travel agency," I suggested. As we parked and headed toward the lawyer's office, Barry suddenly stopped. I looked at him and shrugged. "What's up, John?" "What exactly are we going to ask the lawyer to do for us?" he asked, looking worried. "What do you mean?" I replied, confused. "Well, I think once we walk through that door, it'll cost us a lot. And all we'll end up with is a lighter wallet. We'll get divorced. We'll be free from those cheating women. But think about it. We'll be stuck paying alimony, still making mortgage payments, losing custody of the kids, and then paying child support. All the bills will fall on us. and the court will probably make us keep them on credit cards and cell phones. By the time it's over, we'll also be financing our kids' college education. And what do we get out of it? Nothing, as far as I can see. Why would anyone in their right mind want a divorce? The only reason I can think of is to stay connected with their kids. That's the whole trade-off. Damn it, Barry. I love my kids. I don't want to lose them. I get it. I'd be devastated if I couldn't see my daughters again. But I don't want to be financially ruined just because my wife was unfaithful. After what's happened, the fairest thing would be for us to get custody and hold them accountable. But that seems unlikely, Barry replied, clearly sharing my concerns. It feels like we're being forced into a corner, I said, feeling trapped. We both stood silently in the parking lot. John, who in the world came up with these unfair laws? It's just not right, Barry added, frustrated. We turned and walked back to our cars. Barry, I have to admit, Sheila is a great mother. If I had to raise the kids, I don't think I could do as good a job as she does. Yeah, I get it. Same goes for Greta. She's a loving mother and the girls adore her. It liquidates me to say it, but she's a better parent than I could ever be, even though she cheated, Barry admitted. We both fell silent again. I leaned against my car, absent-mindedly kicking the gravel, while Barry fiddled with the zipper on his jacket. John, want to grab some ribs? We shared a full rack and downed 3 beers each. To pass the time, we switched to coffee and indulged in banana pudding. Once we sobered up enough to drive, we headed to Good Times Travel Agency. Nancy Rayburn, an old family friend turned former friend, ran the place. Everyone in our circle relied on Nancy to plan their trips. Loyalty was the only thing keeping her in business, as the internet wiped out her competition. As we walked in, it was clear from her expression that she didn't need to say anything. Barry and I sat down, grinning as we faced the cause of our troubles. The other 2 agents with Nancy quickly excused themselves for lunch. One of them left a brown bag on his desk. It was obvious everyone in the office knew the situation and was trying to distance themselves. We waited in silence, not saying a word. Nancy smiled, trying to get comfortable in her chair, but failing. Finally, she couldn't hold back. "How can I help you gentlemen today?" Nancy asked, her voice shaky. Barry and I exchanged a look and let out a loud chuckle, loud enough for Nancy to hear. I leaned in and spoke quietly. "You have 5 minutes to spill everything, or we'll cause such a scene that the police will have to treat this place like a crime scene. Come on, guys, give me a break. I won't tell you anything more than what your wives have already shared." "You wouldn't do anything crazy, would you?" Nancy pleaded, trying to keep control. Barry stood up and turned toward the office entrance. 2 other agents and a couple planning a trip were there. "Listen up, everyone. I suggest you step outside for a few minutes because we're about to rearrange the furniture." "John." "Barry, hold on. All right, what do you want? Just don't get me or the office in trouble. I don't need any more problems," Nancy said, sounding desperate. "Good times," Barry muttered. The agency was a franchise, and Nancy had faced some issues over the past year. She didn't want any more attention. Barry gestured for everyone to relax and sit back down. "Nancy, who else is with Sheila and Greta?" I asked directly. "John, there are over 1,000 people on that ship. You know what I mean," Nancy replied, trying to dodge the question. "Nancy, who else from International Casualty is on the ship?" I pressed, my patience thinning. "I can't tell you that," she said firmly. "Nancy, what rooms are Sheila and Greta in?" Barry asked, his voice calm but insistent. "They're booked in room 113 on the sunset deck," she answered, her voice shaky. "That's not what I asked, is it?" I retorted, my frustration growing. "Damn it, John, what are you trying to do? What do you want from me?" Nancy snapped, exasperated. "Which rooms are Calvin Bostic and Clayton Mankiw in?" I demanded, slamming my fist on the desk. Nancy hesitated, her face showing concern as she stammered. "Bostic and Mankiw are in room 115 on the sunset deck," she finally admitted, barely audible. Barry leaned across the table, locking eyes with Nancy. "Nancy, Calvin is sharing a room with my wife Greta," he said, his voice cold. Nancy trembled, trying to push her chair away from the table. "Greta and Calvin are sharing a room," and Calvin's frustration was clear when he hit the table. "Both Greta and Calvin are in room 113, and Sheila and Clayton are in room 115. But I'm not the one who arranged this. Someone else did. I just followed orders." Nancy, realizing she had revealed too much, abruptly stopped speaking and handed us the documents we had requested. It was hard to tell if she was on the verge of tears, but as we prepared to leave, I turned to her and stressed the importance of not contacting anyone, whether on the ship or elsewhere, about our visit or our conversation. I warned her that doing so would have severe consequences for her business. As we left the building, Barry expressed uncertainty about our next steps. I admitted I didn't have a concrete plan. It just seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Barry decided to leave his 2 daughters, Grace and Marie, with his sister Beth, who also had 2 teenage girls. Once everything was settled, he planned to join me at the house. We spent the evening reviewing brochures and schedules, which helped us shape our plan. We both acknowledged that our marriages were beyond repair, and our main focus shifted to our children's well-being. We loved them deeply and considered how the divorce would affect their lives, especially our responsibilities. We agreed not to pursue formal divorce proceedings. Instead, we would each decide how best to care for our kids. I hoped that once things settled, I could arrange to live with Sheila and the kids, ensuring their basic needs were met without financially supporting Sheila. This would take careful planning. If everything worked out, I planned to cover their college expenses as well. That evening, we needed to address the immediate issues. Thankfully, the cruise ship offered free Wi-Fi. Barry planned to bring his laptop and download all our friends, relatives, and coworkers' contact information, including addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. Handling cell phones would be tricky, but we decided to tackle that later. The cruise ship was scheduled to arrive in Montego Bay on Wednesday morning. We found an affordable sightseeing flight that would get us there by 7 a.m. that day. Booking a room for the cruise's duration turned out to be easier than expected, and it took less than an hour to arrange a flight to Jamaica and secure a return room reservation. Sheila left a message saying they had settled into their cabin without issues and were already at sea. She asked me to let Barry know that Greta was also on board. The evening was just beginning and we were nearly ready to go. We planned to spend the next day organizing our financial and personal matters, such as bank accounts, bills, credit cards, and belongings. I intended to move all my things to my parents' house for safekeeping, while Barry's brother would take care of his. Fortunately, a colleague from work allowed us to park our cars at his place and gave us a ride to the airport. Although leaving at midnight wasn't ideal, it was necessary. The airport was just a short taxi ride from the cruise ship parking lot. We watched as the sun set behind the market stalls. We only had 2 carry-on bags and Barry's laptop with us. We didn't plan on dressing up, so we packed just the essentials. About 10 minutes later, people began disembarking from the ship. Some headed to the town center, while most made their way to the waiting tour buses in an orderly manner. Everything seemed well coordinated, as if it had been done countless times before. Sheila and Greta walked down the walkway with wide smiles on their faces. The 2 men behind them looked just as pleased, holding hands with our wives. It was clear that these men were Clayton and Calvin. They were attractive, maybe a few years younger than Barry and me, but didn't have the rough masculine look one might expect. We observed them from our small stools until they all boarded the bus to Dunn's River Falls. Barry greeted the ticket collector with a wave, exchanged a few words with the driver, and then approached us. Jamaicans are known for their bargaining skills, and it took about 5 minutes and $200 to get him to agree to help us. Identifying Sheila and Greta to our new acquaintance was easy, and he happily agreed to take as many photos as possible of the 2 couples at the falls. When we asked for some slightly more daring pictures, he grinned and gave us a thumbs up. The bus was due back at 3 o'clock, and we assured him we would be waiting with the agreed payment. He smiled again, carefully emphasized the quality of his camera, and winked. We realized he wanted an extra $200, far more than the value of a $40 camera. After the buses departed, we boarded to settle into our room for an additional $100. The accommodating clerk registered us under the names Bob Jones and James Moore. If all went well, we would remain incognito for the rest of the cruise. We quickly grabbed some sandwiches and spent the day getting familiar with the ship's layout. Within a couple of hours, we had memorized all the stairs, elevators, and passageways. We planned to avoid the dining room and showroom to minimize the risk of running into our wives. Barry set up his laptop and ran some tests. Thankfully, we had no issues with internet access or email. We briefly considered breaking into our wives' rooms, but decided against it. As we sat comfortably in the same booth as before, the buses began to return, with the one from Dunn's River Falls arriving on time. Barry and I were enjoying a couple of glasses of Red Label when Sheila, Greta, and their companions walked past us. The straw hats we wore probably helped conceal our identities. Our ticket collector approached us, grinning from ear to ear. His smile was full of joy, and he couldn't wait to show us his work, boasting about how well he had done. Barry cut him off by handing him a cold beer. We quickly glanced at the photos. There was more affectionate embracing and kissing than we had expected. I handed him $200 and another beer for the driver. We waited a few more minutes to ensure our wives had left the boarding area, then headed back to our cabin. We had a busy evening ahead, but first, we needed to figure out how to discreetly have dinner. The cabin featured a balcony that provided a view of the entrance to the main dining room. Barry and I settled into comfortable seats where we could observe the passengers lining up for dinner. We speculated that our wives would likely opt for an early dinner to allow more time for evening activities like dancing and entertainment. It didn't take long before the four of them arrived and joined the line. The couples walked hand in hand, appearing as though they were married. Barry gave me a puzzled look as I stood up and made a quick call from the service phone. Within 30 seconds, I returned with a wide grin on my face. Just as the couples were about to be seated, an announcement rang out. "Attention, Barry Bartell. Please join your party on the Lido deck. Barry Bartell." The announcement wasn't overly loud or intrusive, but it was clear enough for everyone to hear. Greta immediately turned her head as if there was a speaker directly in front of her. She stepped aside to let the next group of diners pass by. Greta and Sheila engaged in an animated conversation while Clayton and Calvin stood patiently to the side. Suddenly, Greta pulled out her phone and dialed a number from her speed dial. After 30 seconds, she shook her head, signaling that there was no answer. Sheila then made a call, and when her call also went unanswered, both women looked concerned and entered the dining room. "John, that was brilliant. I'd love to have heard their conversation during that meal, even if it did seem a bit childish," Barry said with a chuckle. We exchanged a quick laugh and then headed to the sunset deck for tacos and margaritas. An hour later, we returned to our room, ready to start our work. Today was crucial since we were set to arrive in Cancun the next morning. Neither of our homes had responded to our calls, and no one knew we were out of town. Even if our parents or Barry's brother had tried to reach us, they wouldn't have known where we were. We transferred all the photos from Dunn's River Falls onto the laptop. Some photos captured all four of them, while most focused on the couples. A few showed physical engaged moments, with Sheila wearing a new orange bikini that had some wardrobe malfunctions on the way to the falls, causing her to giggle. Although a video would have been better, we made do with what we had. Barry created a collage page featuring the best dozen shots, with Clayton and Calvin appearing in all of them. We each picked our favorite photo, and Barry included it in an e-card. The message read, "Having a great time, wish you were here." By 9 o'clock, we had sent out over 200 emails. I was surprised by the number of friends, family, and social contacts we had between us. Naturally, everyone at International Casualty received a set of photos. The sky deck was extremely windy and nearly empty. Barry and I found a quiet, secluded spot where we enjoyed 3 long-necked beers, celebrating the success of our first day. We had no idea what we would do the next day, but since the e-card trick had worked so well, we decided to try it again. We turned in early. The ship offered plenty of fruit, Danish pastries, and coffee for breakfast. We avoided the main dining areas and crowded common spaces, instead using service stairways instead of elevators. Barry and I enjoyed refreshing rum drinks with pineapple on the sun deck at the back of the ship. From there, we had a clear view of the main pool, which was getting busier as we sipped our drinks. On our second round, Sheila and Greta appeared, settling comfortably into a couple of lounge chairs, but Clayton and Calvin were nowhere to be seen. Unsure of what to do, we simply watched. At the other end of the deck, a bored-looking teenager was engrossed in his cell phone. I always found it fascinating how quickly teenagers could text on those devices. I nudged Barry, and together we approached the young guy. It was awkward trying to approach a boy on a cruise ship without seeming odd, but we managed. Eventually, he agreed to let us use his phone for $20. "Hello? Hi, Sheila. It's John. Sorry I missed your call last night. I tried calling home 3 times, I began. "John, your call is showing as coming from Baltimore," Sheila responded, confused. "Sorry, I had to borrow this phone. You know I can't make calls from mine. Is everything okay? Your parents didn't know where you were," she said, sounding concerned. "I'm fine, just busy. Are you having a good time?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, we're having a great time. It's too bad you couldn't join us," she replied, her tone lightening. "All right, say hi to Greta for me. By the way, you look amazing in that orange bikini. I don't remember seeing it before," I added, testing her reaction. "What?" Sheila sounded startled. John and I burst into laughter as I ended the call and handed the phone back to its owner. Barry and I decided to block Sheila and Greta's numbers on their phones. I gave the teenager another $20 and reminded him to keep our encounter a secret. He thought it was cool and readily agreed. Sheila and Greta were searching the ship, trying to find me. Sheila tried to hide behind a large towel as if to avoid being noticed, which was a foolish move. She attempted to call the number we had used twice, but eventually gave up. Clayton and Calvin arrived shortly after. Barry headed straight to the service phone on the sun deck. A few minutes later, he returned to the railing with a wide smile. "Attention. Barry Bartell, please join your group at the shuffleboard court. Barry Bartell, please join your group at the shuffleboard court." Upon hearing the announcement, there was a flurry of activity near the pool. Greta and Sheila quickly gathered their belongings and made their way to the shuffleboard court on the port side of the yacht, while Clayton and Calvin just stood there looking annoyed. We watched our wives from above as they waited for half an hour before heading back. As they walked back to their room, Sheila pulled out her phone and made a call. From the look on her face, we could tell the postcards had reached home. We didn't know who she was talking to, but it didn't matter. Everyone who knew us now had pictures of Sheila and Greta with their boyfriends. They lingered on the deck for a few minutes, checking the display on Sheila's phone, before heading to the cabin deck. Clayton and Calvin attended dinner that evening without their female companions and spent the rest of the night drinking at the cabaret bar on the lagoon deck. Barry and I sat in a secluded corner, enjoying beer and pizza, and they never noticed us. We thought about moving closer to eavesdrop on their conversation, but decided against it. Our wives never showed up. Around midnight, both men left the bar, clearly drunk, and had to be helped back to their cabins by several crew members. We never found out how they slept, but it didn't matter to us. The next morning, we were on the sun deck, enjoying breakfast with fresh fruit and coffee as the Diamond Sunset docked in Cancun. Most of the passengers gathered on the promenade deck, eager for the day's activities. We still hadn't decided on our plans for the day. It seemed foolish to follow the two couples ashore. However, that became irrelevant when Sheila and Greta were among the first to disembark with their luggage. They weren't going on a day trip. They were leaving the cruise entirely. While the other tourists boarded the tour buses, Sheila and Greta hailed a cab and left quickly. Barry and I exchanged a final look, unprepared for this unexpected turn of events. We'd assumed our wives would try to find us on the boat, given its limited size, but they made no attempt to do so. Clayton and Calvin also left the ship, boarding a tour bus, leaving us uncertain of their intentions. We enjoyed a leisurely lunch in the nearly empty dining room. With one more stop before returning to Grand Cayman, we needed to rethink our strategy. Perhaps another relaxed lunch in the dining room was in order later. Despite most passengers being ashore, Sheila and Greta's departure made no difference. The atmosphere became more relaxed and enjoyable. The ship was set to leave Cancun that evening and arrive in the Cayman Islands the following afternoon. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for a serious conversation. Talking to Clayton and Calvin was necessary, but Barry and I weren't sure what to say. As we entered the formal dining room, we noticed our wives and their partners had secured a table for 4 with 2 empty seats. Barry and I waited until Clayton and Calvin were seated before approaching and taking the empty seats. No one objected or questioned our presence. "Good evening, gentlemen. I assume you know who we are," I began. Calvin gave a slight nod, while Clayton's expression showed his displeasure at our arrival. Calvin appeared uneasy and unsure, while Clayton was visibly irritated. "Gentlemen, Mr. Bartell and I won't be joining you for dinner. With only 3 days left on the cruise, we thought it wise to advise you to be cautious." I noticed Barry chuckling, but I chose to ignore it. Calvin seemed intrigued, while Clayton grew more agitated. It's worth noting that 222 people go overboard on cruises each year and are never found. After a brief pause for emphasis, Barry and I stood up and left the dining room. We could hear Calvin talking as we walked away, but we couldn't make out his words. We opted for tacos and beer for dinner. Due to the strong wind, we stayed inside, but the sunset through the lounge windows was stunning. "Well, John, that was quite the scene. I'm not entirely sure what you were aiming for, but you definitely got their attention," Barry remarked, still amused. "I'm not sure either. Let's regroup tomorrow and figure out our next move," I suggested. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. "Gentlemen, I am Mr. Sorensen. May I have a moment of your time?" Barry and I turned to face the imposing Nordic crewman who had approached us, with 2 other crew members standing silently nearby. I glanced at Barry, and we exchanged smiles before nodding at this figure of authority. "Am I speaking to Mr. Jones and Mr. Moore, or to Mr. Bartell and Mr. Connor?" Sorensen asked. "Bartell and Connor," I replied, seeing no point in hiding our identities. "Some passengers reported that you threatened to throw them overboard. Can you explain their accusations?" Sorensen inquired. "No, we didn't threaten them. We simply mentioned some statistics about maritime accidents. In fact, we advised them to be careful," I clarified. "It was a subtle threat, and you both know it. Sorensen countered. Why would we do something like that? Barry asked, feigning innocence. Sorensen gestured toward a quiet corner, and we followed. Gentlemen, did you threaten Mr. Bostic and Mr. Mancow? Barry and I exchanged glances and seemed to come to an agreement. Yes, though it wasn't phrased as a threat, our words were intended that way, I admitted. Was there a specific reason for that implied threat? Sorensen asked, now serious. Absolutely, and you played a part in that reason, I replied. Sorensen's expression suggested he was expecting a fuller explanation. Mr. Sorensen, Nordic Cruise Lines arranged for these two men to share cabins with our wives for the week. Mr. Bostic was with Mrs. Bartell, while Mr. Mankiw shared a stateroom with my wife. It appears Nordic Cruise Lines is hosting a cruise with entertainment at sea for married women seeking to spend time with their lovers. While I understand that you are likely legally protected from such situations, this feels incredibly distressing to me. Mr. Connor, I understand your frustration with your wife's actions, but surely you don't believe that the cruise line endorses or supports such behavior. We pride ourselves on being a family-oriented company and are committed to maintaining that reputation, Sorensen responded, attempting to calm the situation. Barry and I stayed silent in response to Sorensen's questions. Although we had plenty to say, we chose to keep quiet. We leaned back in our chairs, exchanged smiles, and watched as Sorensen, though slightly flustered, maintained control of the conversation. Regrettably, we'll need to report this matter to the proper authorities. They may have questions for you, he stated. Which authorities? We're at sea. Aren't you the authority in this situation? I asked, pushing back. Mr. Connor, Mr. Bartell, I kindly request that you avoid any further interactions with Mr. Mankiw and Mr. Bostic for the remainder of the cruise. Can you assure me that there will be no disturbances before we reach Miami? Sorensen asked, his tone firm. Barry and I nodded, smiling as we agreed. The group left, and we found ourselves alone in the room. We spent the evening drafting emails to various media outlets, embellishing details, and including photos we knew wouldn't be published. The next morning, we enjoyed a hearty breakfast in the dining area. Clayton and Calvin were nowhere to be seen. Later, as the ship docked at the Grand Cayman Islands, we walked by their cabins and noticed the breakfast dishes left outside their doors. We saw Calvin disembark with his luggage, bidding farewell to the ship, leaving his maid behind. Barry and I decided to spend the day on land, even though there wasn't much to see. However, we did have a great time swimming with manta rays, the only activity on the trip not motivated by revenge. In the evening, we enjoyed another satisfying dinner. Clayton was still missing. I briefly considered that he might have left the ship after us, but I doubted it. Barry had received more than 30 email responses to the postcard we sent out. Most were lighthearted and filled with laughter, but a few criticized our actions as despicable. We were pleased to see that our message had reached its intended audience. Friends and acquaintances found it amusing, but our family members were not pleased. Sheila and Greta had not sent any messages. Since we were returning home the next day, we made sure to fully charge our phones before bed. We also sent out 32 press releases, even though we had no idea how to properly prepare or distribute them. Among those, we sent 2 to Piccolo World Tours, the company that owns the Good Time Travel Agency franchise. We may have gone a bit too far, accusing Nancy Rayburn of organizing trips for married housewives to have romantic escapades with their boyfriends, but we felt she deserved it. The rest of the story ended up in newspapers and on TV expose shows. Hopefully we'll get some sort of response. It had been a good day, and we slept well that night. The next morning, we had breakfast on the Lido deck. After we finished, Barry turned on his phone. I had one missed call from my father. We each made our first calls since the trip began. Dad, it's John. I saw you tried to reach me. What's going on? Well, son, I assume you know more about this than I do. All I know is Sheila arrived on Wednesday and took the kids with her. You asked me not to let her take them, but I couldn't stop it. I later went into the house, but she was gone. The front door was unlocked, so I went in and looked around. Most of her clothes and the kids' clothes were gone. It looked like she left in a hurry. She didn't say where she was going. Jason seemed upset about leaving, but I heard her mention something about Noble's Grove, which seemed to cheer him up. Sheila's sister Loretta lives in Mount Carmel. That's probably where she went. I'll try to find her number and give her a call. John, we got the postcard with the photos. Can you explain what's going on? I think it's pretty clear, Dad. Sheila decided to go on a cruise with a former colleague and left me to care for the kids while she spent time with another man. What do you want me to do, Dad? Did you lock up the house? Yes, I did. That's all I could think of. Barry and I hadn't planned on going home immediately, but the situation had changed. I decided that Sheila should stay in the house with the kids. I had no idea why she left. "What are your plans?" I asked. "I'm not sure, but I think I'll see you in a day or so. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for calling," I replied. I went to pour myself a cup of coffee. As Barry continued his call, he looked unhappy. We had both assumed our wives would be returning home to the kids, and we planned to live elsewhere for a few months while we figured things out. We were considering seeking work in the Pensacola area. Barry returned with a disappointed look on his face. He grabbed a Danish pastry from the buffet and settled into the chaise lounge opposite me. "Wow, you look as thrilled as I am," I commented. Barry forced a weak smile and sighed. "John, she's gone. Greta left and didn't take the kids. She left them with my sister." "What? She left the kids? What did she say?" Beth said she didn't say much. She thanked Beth for watching them and talked to the girls for a few minutes. Beth mentioned her car was packed with clothes. I don't know how she found out I left the kids there. She left alone. "What about the house?" Beth's husband said no one was there. All the furniture and stuff are still there, but Greta's gone. He didn't go inside, but I assume all her clothes are gone. My situation didn't go as planned either. Sheila found out the boys were at my parents' house and took them from there. I think she went to her sister's in Mount Carmel, but I'm not sure. She took all her clothes and the boys' clothes, too. My house seems empty as well, I explained. We sat in silence for a few moments. Barry looked at me with concern. "I know it's early, but I could really use a beer." We spent the rest of our cruise in the Lido Lounge, drinking more beer than usual. As the ship departed, we watched the tired passengers heading home. Although we didn't see the Clayton sale, the place was packed. The friendly bartender informed us the lounge was closing, so we headed back to our stateroom only to find our belongings packed and in the aisle. We were told authorities would meet us for our threatening behavior. We weren't sure what that meant, but no one escorted us off the ship, and no authorities showed up. We had hoped for some media attention, but nothing happened. Barry and I took the last 2 seats in the airport limo van. The cost of last-minute one-way tickets home was steep, but we had no choice. During the flight, we barely spoke. Our plans had gone awry, leaving us both feeling down. Barry still had his kids, but his wife was gone. I, on the other hand, had neither kids nor a wife. Returning to an empty house wasn't pleasant. There were no messages from Sheila at home or on our phones. I called her workplace and found out she no longer worked at International Casualty. I assumed Greta, Clayton, and Calvin were also gone. I spent the first day back cleaning the house and getting rid of Sheila's leftover belongings. Barry was in a similar situation, with only memories of Greta's brief visit to say goodbye to her daughters. We canceled our credit cards and restricted access to our finances. Greta was an adult and could take care of herself, but Sheila had Todd and Jason, and I needed to figure out how to support them. It saddened me that she took them away, but I knew she was their mother and had a responsibility to care for them. Greta didn't seem willing to take that risk. In some ways, it was better for the kids. Barry and his daughter settled into their new home, and things started to return to normal. As expected, Beth took care of the girls while Barry worked and helped with household chores. My life, however, had completely changed. My evenings were now spent watching TV and eating microwave dinners. I did some digging and found out that Calvin Bostic had left town right after being fired. Clayton had also lost his job, but no one knew where he was working or living. I contacted Sheila's sister, Loretta, to find out about the kids, but it was a dead end. Loretta said Sheila stayed one night and then left without telling anyone where she went. I didn't fully believe her, but I had no choice but to trust her until I knew otherwise. Surprisingly, Barry and I drifted apart. He still had a family, while I had nothing. I tried spending time with him and the girls, but it was always awkward. At the start of the new school year, I visited the boys' old school to make sure Todd and Jason's records were transferred correctly. A helpful young woman informed me that the paperwork had been sent to North Shock Hill Elementary in Frackville 2 weeks earlier. She seemed proud to share this, and I thanked her. I quickly found Sheila's new cell number and had to call 3 times before she finally answered. Caller ID is handy unless someone uses it to avoid you. I kept the conversation brief and asked her to meet me at the food court in Frackville Mall. I waited over 30 minutes for her to arrive. This was our first contact since her cruise, and I avoided mentioning it. By the time she sat down, my large coffee had gone cold. We didn't exchange any greetings, so I broke the silence. "I want you and the boys to move back into the house." Sheila shifted uncomfortably on the plastic seat, her hands empty since she hadn't gotten a drink. "All of us together?" No, just you and the boys. I have a small apartment nearby. The house will be more familiar and comfortable for Todd and Jason. They can go back to their old school and I can see them regularly. I can't afford to live in a house. I'll cover the rent, utilities, food, and household expenses. I'll also handle the boys' clothing and school costs. What about me? Well, Sheila, you're an adult now. I believe you can manage on your own. I need to focus on my work. You can find a job that fits around the boys' school schedule or work evenings so I can watch them. I'm sure you'll find something to keep you busy. She had mixed emotions, and I wasn't sure what she expected or was willing to accept. Her eyes scanned the mall as if searching for something. I think she saw both pros and cons in the situation. All right, I'll do it for the boys. You're right, it will be good for them. When should we start? I'll leave in the next few days and you can move in whenever you're ready. The decision was made quickly, faster than my weight in that uncomfortable chair. We sat in silence for a moment. John, is there anything else you want to discuss? That was my cue to leave. I stood up and placed my empty cup on the table. No. As I walked away, I thought I saw a tear in her eyes. When I glanced back, she was still sitting there. The next 6 months passed without major incidents. Sheila found a job that fit her schedule while the boys were in school. I had them on weekends, and she took care of them during the week. Barry received divorce papers from Greta in Nevada, and his daughters were living with him, seemingly doing well with help from his sister and mother. Work was going better than expected, but to advance, I would need to relocate. Given the circumstances, I was hesitant. As Christmas approached, everything fell apart. When I returned from lunch, Todd and Jason were already in the office. What's going on? Why aren't you in school? I asked. The furnace broke down, so we were all sent home, Jason replied, his gaze fixed on his feet. When did you arrive here? I inquired further. We went home first, then decided to come here. The key was under the mat, Todd explained. You could have come in earlier, I remarked, noting their hesitant demeanor. Both kept their eyes on the floor, avoiding my gaze. What's wrong? What are you hiding? I pressed. Jason, stuttering slightly, broke the silence. When we got home, Mom left her bedroom door open. She was in there with that man, Clayton. He was in the bedroom? I asked, seeking clarity. Yes, Dad, they were both unclothed, doing what you see on the internet, Jason confessed. Silenced by shock, I pondered the next steps. How could I erase that image from their minds? Jason handed me his phone, showing me the photos. It only took a second to confirm what they said. Todd added that Clayton had been there several times and that Mom, Sheila, had warned them not to tell me. She said if I got upset, they'd all have to move back to Frackville. After a brief discussion, we decided the boys should move in with me. I handed them the apartment keys and sent them on their way. Then, I headed to Human Resources. Minot, North Dakota, might not be a vacation spot, but there was an immediate job opening, and I was ready. After sorting out finances, I returned to the house. It was empty, likely because Sheila was at work. The unmade bed hinted she had been home for an afternoon nap. Just as I finished packing the boys' belongings, Sheila walked in. John, what's going on? I thought we had an agreement. Where are you taking everything? She demanded. The agreement is off, Sheila. The boys and I are leaving. You can yell all you want, but it won't change anything, I declared firmly. You can't take my boys, John. I won't allow it, and the courts won't either, she protested. I'm taking them. If you want them back, go to court and explain everything, I responded calmly. What are you talking about? She asked, smirking with her hands on her hips. I placed the last bag down and faced her squarely. What did you have for lunch today, Sheila? I asked pointedly. What does that matter? Why do you care? She retorted, still confident. By the way, the furnace at school broke today, I mentioned casually. I'm not following, she confessed, puzzled. The school furnace broke, so all the kids were sent home during lunch. I'll ask again. What did you have for lunch? I repeated, tightening the noose of my inquiry. Her confidence crumbled, and she sank onto the couch, silent. I picked up the last bag and paused at the door. Jason took some pictures. I hope Clayton has health insurance because he'll need it. I let him off last time, but now he'll face the consequences. She didn't cry or faint, just sat there like a zombie. I left without slamming the door. We bought a small trailer and moved out by the end of the week. I passed by Clayton Mackey's house, but the owner said he'd left that day and didn't provide an address. I decided to deal with Clayton later. Sheila did consult a lawyer about custody, but she never contacted me. We settled into our new home, and the boys seemed happy. They never mentioned missing their mother. About 6 months later, I received divorce papers from Nevada. She didn't ask for anything, and I didn't offer anything. It always bothered me that she didn't fight for custody of her sons. I think about it often, but never bring it up. I believe the boys need a mother. Next week, I'll start looking for one, and Todd and Jason have agreed to help. My wife Audrey has been incredible to me. She's tall, slender, with brown blonde hair, and a perfect figure. When we first met, her eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. I'm 6'2" and was on the swim team in school, so I have a swimmer's body. Our friends always joked that our constant smiles gave away our feelings for each other. The lovemaking was amazing. For the first 2 years, we met just for that. Everything changed when Audrey made a mistake with Brad, a 6 10 inches basketball player. I got bombarded with messages and pictures of her and Brad from a party, where they ended up kissing and disappearing into his room. The next day, I confronted her and she admitted everything. She had gotten drunk and made a stupid mistake, insisting she loved only me and was sorry. Most of our friends said it was a one-time thing and that I should forgive her. After 2 weeks of anger, I did, but I warned her it was her only chance. Looking back, those who told me to forgive her ended up in bad relationships, while those who said to leave her are happily married. I became a programmer, and Audrey got a job as an administrator. We married and had 2 kids, Matt and Marcy. Life was good until Audrey started working in real estate, leading to long hours and less closeness. Remembering her past mistake, I installed monitoring software on her phone and a recorder in her bag. Soon, I discovered she was having lovemaking with a guy named David. Heartbroken, I clung to the fact that their conversations lacked affection. I tried to win her back by cooking her favorite meal, dressing the kids nicely, and showing her more attention. She seemed receptive, and I felt hopeful. I sent her pictures of the kids and expressed my love whenever I saw her messaging David. I was thrilled when she told David she couldn't meet him. On Friday night, I asked my brother and his wife to babysit the kids and took Audrey to a 5-star restaurant for dinner and dancing. That night, we tried to break our record for the most lovemaking in one evening. We didn't, but it was fun trying. The next day, we picked up the kids and spent the whole day at the water park. Life felt good, and I thought things were working out. However, Audrey's text to David on Wednesday morning shattered my heart. "Looking forward to seeing you. I missed you." I realized she was a liar and everything I believed about her was false. I decided not to listen to her excuses or let her deceive me anymore. Audrey had betrayed me and the children, even if she hadn't formally ended things with us. I saw David's face when I activated the camera on Audrey's phone using the monitoring program. He was a colleague of hers whom I had met at her office. Realizing violence wasn't worth it, I decided to remove Audrey from our lives, exploit her double life, and seek primary custody of the children. I would show everyone how she chose her lover over us. The following week, there was a concert by Marcy's group. I moved a reminder on Audrey's phone calendar to the day after the event. When I confirmed she was at her lover's apartment during the concert, I left her a message and pretended she had missed it. Marcy was upset, but I reassured her that adults sometimes get busy with work. Audrey's late arrivals were becoming the norm. When we got home, she smelled freshly showered, despite still being in work clothes. She tried to make amends with Marcy, who eventually forgave her, but insisted she couldn't miss the next concert. I wondered if Audrey was genuinely remorseful, or just afraid of being exposed. I noticed Audrey and her lover meeting at a small restaurant known for its Scotch eggs. I mentioned this to my father-in-law and made a reservation for Wednesday, the day they usually went there. Ensuring Audrey was still in the office, I headed to the restaurant with my in-laws. We arrived a few minutes after her, and I saw Audrey sitting in the back with her lover. "Do you want to sit in a booth or at a table?" I asked loudly. Audrey's head shot up, eyes wide, and she quickly moved away from her lover. He looked puzzled until he saw us and tried to shrink in his seat. As we were seated, Audrey rushed over. "Mom and Dad, what are you doing here?" "We heard about the amazing Scotch eggs and decided to try them." Dad smiled, happy to see Audrey. He leaned in for a hug. "Audrey, they're really great. Why don't you join us?" "My colleague and I are sitting right there." Audrey pointed to a booth where her lover was waving, his face red. The smiles on my in-laws' faces disappeared. "We wouldn't want to disturb your business lunch," my mother-in-law said, staring at the lover. "No problem. Audrey said enthusiastically. "We're just grabbing a quick bite before heading out to show a property." It was a tense lunch. After the lover shook hands with everyone, Audrey did most of the talking. My mother-in-law frowned at her food, and my father-in-law stared at the lover without saying a word. I asked simple questions like, "How long have you worked here?" And "How is a nice guy like you still single?" My favorite was, "Audrey, you should introduce your sister to him. If it works out, we could be related." Audrey's smile was tense. The lover finally said, "No thanks, I have a girlfriend." "Oh, is it someone we know or a secret?" I asked. "She's in a bad relationship and trying to get out of it." "I don't feel comfortable telling you who it is," he said with a grin. The smirk vanished when he realized everyone was staring at him, especially Audrey. When the food arrived, my in-laws ate quickly. I only took a few bites of my Scotch egg. Audrey noticed and asked, "Is the Scotch egg delicious?" "I've lost my appetite," I replied, staring at her. Audrey's mother waved to the waiter and gave him a $100 bill to pay for everyone. She jumped up, saying she needed to go to the restroom. The waiter returned, and Audrey's father took the change, stared at the lover like he was something smelly, and went to the restroom. Without saying a word, I said to Audrey and her lover, "Sorry to interrupt your business lunch. I'm sure you have plans to discuss and people to deceive." I got up to leave the restaurant. Audrey chased me to my car. "It was nice to see you at lunch. We'll discuss this at home. Your parents will be here in a second." By then, I saw Audrey's parents almost running to the front door, not looking at the lover. Audrey, seeing where I was looking, lowered her gaze and said, "It's probably better this way." My parents came out, hugged Audrey briefly, and got into my car. I walked away from Audrey without saying a word. Neither of us spoke the whole way home. When I dropped my in-laws off, I said goodbye. As usual, Mom hugged me tightly and told me she loved me like the son she never had. Dad hugged me and told me to bring the kids. He missed us all. It saddened me to realize that Audrey was worth lying to her parents. Audrey's parents had already disowned Karen, their younger daughter, due to her infidelity. They immediately interrupted Audrey whenever she mentioned Karen. One Sunday, Karen tried to sneak into her son-in-law's church during a sermon. Her father interrupted the pastor to apologize for having to leave and walked out without acknowledging Karen. Audrey returned home that evening with a story about how a dinner meeting with her lover secured a big deal for both of them. "It's inappropriate to go to dinner alone with an unmarried man. I don't want you near him anymore, and I definitely don't want you to go out to dinner with him again," I told her. "Honey, I'm sorry. If it bothers you, I won't go to lunch with him anymore. Don't worry about him. We made a great deal," Audrey said. I told Audrey I would sleep in the guest room until she properly apologized to me and her parents. "Remember when your sister got caught cheating?" Audrey was clearly alarmed. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," she said. On the plus side, I now had an excuse not to have lovemaking with her. Then I installed a switch in her car and her lover's car while they were at his apartment. I also sabotaged the transmission sensor to keep mechanics guessing. One day, while I was at Matt's football game, Audrey decided to spend time with her lover. I remotely turned off Audrey's car. "Knock, knock," her lover said. "What happened? Came back so quickly?" she asked. "My car won't start. Let's wait 15 minutes, he replied. "The battery is charged, the headlights work, but it just won't start," she said. "Do you want me to give you a ride home?" he asked. "No, you idiot. If my husband sees you dropping me off, it will be a big problem," Audrey said. "Call a tow truck. I need to pick up Marcy for her band competition." "Why not let her husband drive her?" he asked. "He's with Matt at his football game. You can take my car," she replied. "Debacle at the restaurant?" he asked. "Oh, yes. Okay, take me to the rental car and I'll call a tow truck for my car," she said. "Meet the tow truck driver and pay him $50 to give the address of our business where the car was found." Audrey's phone rang. "Damn, hello? Have you picked up Marcy yet?" "I'm having car trouble. I think it's the battery," she said. "Do you want me to come to your office and help?" I asked. "No, I already called a tow truck and will rent a car nearby so Marcy won't be late," she replied. "Okay, call if you need help," I said, and hung up. Audrey's lover dropped her at the rental car place, but she was late picking up Marcy. Luckily, Marcy called me and I asked a friend to take Matt home. I picked up Marcy for her competition just in time. When Marcy and I got home, Matt was already in his room and Audrey was waiting, still in work clothes but smelling like she just showered. "Marcy, I'm so sorry I had car trouble and couldn't pick you up. I rented a car, but by then Daddy had already picked you up," Audrey said. "It's okay, Mom. I just made it to the competition thanks to Dad." This is the second time you've missed my performances. I hope the work is worth it, Marcy said before going to her room. I confronted Audrey. I called your work after lunch and they said you left. You had over 2 hours to pick up Marcy. What happened? Audrey froze for a few seconds and then said, I was doing some things and thought I had enough time. I didn't expect the car to break down. What business were you doing? You never mentioned it, I asked. Just some things that needed to be done, she replied. Well, I hope those things were more important than your daughter's love because you're on thin ice, I said, then went to sleep in the guest room. It was clear Audrey didn't care about missing our kids' activities. She prioritized her lover over us. The mechanics couldn't find any problems with Audrey's car. Marcy started pushing Audrey's buttons. Mom, you said you were taking me and my friends to the mall this Saturday. Can you tell me now if you don't want to drive us? We don't want to be stuck there if your car breaks down again. Matt heard this and laughed. Nice joke, Marcy. The kids felt unappreciated by their mother. Audrey complained to me, asking me to talk to the children about respecting her. I'll think about it while I wait for your apology in the guest room, I said. She blamed my isolation on my stubbornness. On Saturday, I took Marcy and her friends to the mall. Audrey said she had work to do. Her car was parked at a house for sale. Who was with her when we got home? Marcy thanked me loudly in front of her mother, emphasizing her appreciation. She then called her friend and ignored Audrey's questions. Audrey looked like she wanted to complain, but I started giggling, took my drink, and locked myself in my office. Audrey, still in work clothes, smelled like she had just showered. She likely had lovemaking in a house she was selling. I hope she at least changed the sheets. Matt's birthday was coming up, so we rented 6 lanes at a bowling alley for friends and family. Finding a place without a Wednesday night league took some effort, but I managed. When I told Audrey, she looked uneasy. I said I'd take the kids and their friends while she picked up the cake and candles. We'd eat pizza, open presents, and bowl. The week before, I sabotaged her lover's car 3 times to prevent their meetings. They rescheduled for Tuesday, so I broke his car again. After it was fixed, I saw Audrey's text on Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing you a little later in the afternoon. Her GPS showed her heading to his apartment. She had time to have fun, get the cake, and come to the party. I rented a car with a big trunk for a special plan. Confirming Audrey was at her lover's apartment, I placed a covered cage at the front door. I used a door ram to smash the door, then activated a taser on the metal cage, releasing an angry skunk into the apartment. I quickly left. Listening through Audrey's phone, I heard screams and her lover telling her to call the police. I blocked her phone. The lover finally called the police, saying a wild animal was in his apartment. The police arrived, guns drawn. The skunk attacked, causing them to scream and vomit before closing the door. It took hours for animal control to capture the skunk. Afterward, 2 smelly police officers questioned Audrey and her lover. 2 more officers arrived, but quickly left due to the smell. Who's the owner here? An officer asked. I am, the lover replied. Who are you? The officer asked Audrey. Just visiting, she replied. Do you have ID? The officer asked. Is this really necessary? I just got attacked by a skunk, Audrey said, showing her ID. How do you know him? The officer asked. We work together, Audrey replied. What were you doing here? The officer asked. Picking up documents, Audrey said. After confirming their identities, the officer asked, Why was there a skunk in the apartment? It was a birthday present, the lover started, but Audrey interrupted. Did you buy an adult skunk for your boyfriend? The officer asked. He's not my boyfriend, Audrey said. Stop lying. Why did you buy an adult skunk as a present? The officer pressed. I didn't. I bought a young skunk. He told me he loves skunks, so I surprised him. But it turned out to be an adult, and it attacked him, Audrey said. The skunk must have been expensive, the officer said. Not too much, Audrey said. Do you buy expensive pets for all your coworkers or just your boyfriend? The officer asked. Audrey didn't answer. What about the broken door? The officer asked. I broke it yesterday and didn't have time to fix it, the lover said. The officer must have stared at them for a minute before saying, I know this is all a lie, but I can't stand this smell anymore. You and your boyfriend can leave because you both smell worse than us. I'm not contaminating my car with that stench. With that, they left, slamming the broken door loudly. What the hell was that? The lover asked. Audrey, always sharp, replied, We couldn't tell them someone broke down your door and released a skunk in your apartment. Why not? He asked. Because then they would ask my husband if he did it. He already knows. If not, they would tell him I was here, Audrey said sweetly. Be honest, how many other women do you see? No one, the lover replied indignantly. When was the last time you slept with another woman besides me? Audrey asked. About a month ago, he muttered. You've been sleeping with her this whole time, Audrey asked. There was another one 6 months ago, he said quietly. Did their husbands find out? Audrey asked. Why do you think they were married? He asked. Because I know what turns you on. Now answer, Audrey said. Yes, both, he replied. Did they know it was you? Audrey asked. Not sure, he replied. Great. Now I'm sure lying to the police was the right choice. This is likely revenge from one of their husbands. I'll find out if my husband did it, Audrey said. Audrey's phone rang. Hey, Audrey, have you picked up the cake yet? I asked. Damn, I'm stuck at work. Leaving now, she replied. Don't let Matt down, I said. I'm on my way, she replied, and hung up. Audrey showered, dressed, and left. I stopped her car halfway to the store. After the fourth attempt, it started. It broke down 3 more times, but she finally made it. She arrived late at the bowling alley. When Audrey walked in with the cake, we all covered our noses and coughed. Matt asked his mom to just go home after the party. On the way home, Matt asked, Why does Mom always miss our events? She tries to do what's best for the family, but sometimes it's hard to be in 2 places at once, I replied. But you're always there for us and make more money, Matt said. I have a more flexible schedule, so it's easier for me to be with my favorite skunks, I said. It's not funny, Dad, Marcy said. It'll be funny when you tell your friends at school tomorrow, I replied. We had to throw away the smelly cake, which the kids found funny. I was glad to sleep in the guest room that night. A few days later, I saw Audrey sniffing the upholstery in my car. She looked like a mouse searching for cheese. I followed her upstairs and recorded her sniffing my shoes. I never asked why her car didn't smell like a skunk. 2 Saturdays later, I told everyone I needed to go to the hardware store. No one wanted to come, so I went alone to the lover's apartment. His car was there. I knocked on his door. How can I help? He asked. Actually, I think we can help each other. I'm Audrey's husband. Can I come in? I asked. His face paled as I pushed past him and sat at the kitchen table. I invited him to sit with me. The place smelled like fresh paint and skunk, with all new furniture. I know you've been with my wife Audrey for over 6 months, I said. Hey man, we're just friends, he replied. Would it help if I showed you photos and videos of your get-togethers? I asked. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied. No nonsense. I know you're sleeping with my wife and I have proof. I don't care about you. I care about what my wife does. So instead of hiring a detective to get dirt on her, I offer to pay you for it, I said. You want me to make a video of me having lovemaking with your wife? That'll cost $2,000, he said. He stared at me for a minute, considering the offer. $2,000 for a video of me with your wife? Are you serious? He asked. Yes, I'm serious. $2,000 for a video showing her face and body during lovemaking. I also need written consent from you that you took the video and allowed me to use it, I replied. If you have so much evidence, why do you need a video? He asked. I need more leverage for the divorce, I said. That would be really cruel, he said. Like how she betrays me and her children? I asked. He paused, then whispered, yes, like that. $2,000, and I won't tell the other husbands about their wives. I'll even pay for a spa day for you and Audrey at a hotel, I offered. He looked at me carefully. Make it $3,000 and we have a deal, he said. Great, don't tell Audrey. I'll arrange and pay for the spa and hotel. The Monday after, I'll call to set up a time to get the video and pay you in cash. All clear? Yes, he replied. Make sure her face is visible in the footage. I'll send the consent form today and call you Monday, I said, then left and continued my shopping. On Wednesday evening, I told Audrey, I have a conference this Saturday. Is that a problem? No, it looks like it will be a relaxing weekend. Have fun, she replied. On Monday night, I called her lover and picked him up. I didn't want to be recorded. I took him to a quiet rest stop, checked him for any recording devices, then let him back into the car. Do you have what I need? I asked. Yes, he replied, handing me a flash drive. I checked it on my laptop. This is exactly what I needed. Do you have the consent form? He handed me an envelope, which I verified. I took a photo and sent it to myself. I then handed him an envelope of cash. He counted the $100 bills twice, smiling. If you need another video, let me know. Easiest money I ever made, he said. On Tuesday, I told my brother and his wife what was going on, showing them a short video, photos, and a list of Audrey's dates, highlighting missed family events. I did the same for Audrey's parents and my parents, asking everyone to ignore Audrey until I gave the okay. On Wednesday, while Audrey was with her lover, I explained to the kids what was happening. Mom is infatuated with another man, and I'm not sure if she still loves me, I said. They asked if we would get a divorce. I said we would discuss it with their mother. She's at her boyfriend's house today. They both shouted, "Is she there now?" "Yes," I replied, showing them the GPS tracker on her car outside his apartment. Marcy asked, "Is this why Mom misses our events?" I showed them the dated list with missed events highlighted. I also showed a time-lapse tracker of Audrey's whereabouts on Marcy's concert and Matt's birthday. They cried when they saw what time she left the office and her lover's apartment on Matt's birthday. "Damn that skunk," Marcy said. I told them, "The most important thing is that I love you both. This is a problem between your mother and me, and we will do everything we can to remain a family." After half an hour of crying, hugging, and talking, Audrey walked in. Seeing our expressions, she looked worried. "What happened?" she asked. "Children, go to your rooms while Mom and I talk," I said. They hugged me, gave Audrey a hostile look, and went to their rooms. When the doors closed, I asked Audrey to sit. "What's happening?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Audrey, I know you're having an affair." "Oh God, no. That's not true. I would never cheat on you. Why would you say that?" she said, tearing up. "If you won't tell me the truth, this conversation is over," I said firmly. "This must be a mistake. Someone thought they saw something that wasn't true," she replied, trying to sound convincing. "Okay, we're done for today. Think about what you're doing to this family. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Until then, don't talk to me or the kids," I said, heading to the guest room. Audrey followed me, insisting, "You are wrong. I would never do that." I closed the door in her face and she fell silent. I heard her talking quietly through Marcy's door, pleading, "Marcy, what did Daddy tell you? It's all a mistake. Please open the door so we can talk." Marcy texted me and Matt, "Can you make her go away?" "I'll try, but she just denied the affair, so there's no point if she's lying," I replied. "Perhaps you're mistaken," Marcy wrote back. "I have pictures of them unclothed together," I replied. "Oh," was all Marcy texted. I opened the door, and Audrey looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Please leave the children alone until we resolve this. You're making it harder for them," I said. "But I want to know what you told them," Audrey insisted. "I told them the truth. You have another man. This is between us until we sort it out. Leave the kids alone," I said. Audrey went to her bedroom, crying all night. The next day, I was at the kitchen table waiting for Audrey when she came home. The children were with friends. "Audrey, please sit down." Audrey sat. "Have you thought about what you're doing to your family?" I asked. She nodded. "Are you ready to talk honestly about your affair?" I asked. She nodded again. "So what do you have to say? It's all a misunderstanding?" I asked. "Yes, I had an emotional connection. We had lunch several times, but that's all. I love only you," Audrey said. "If you lie, this conversation is over. We'll talk Saturday at 9. The children will stay with my parents. Think about what you're doing to this family," I said, leaving for the guest room. On Saturday morning, I had breakfast with the kids at Audrey's parents' house. When I returned, Audrey was at the kitchen table. "Are you ready to talk honestly?" I asked. She nodded. "Did you tell my parents?" I asked. "Yes." "Have you told your parents, your brother and his wife?" I asked. "Yes. How could you do this to me?" Audrey asked, her voice quivering. "You lied to me, the children, and our parents. You kissed him a couple of times? That's all? Now you've turned our parents and children against me," Audrey said. "Since you still refuse to be honest, this conversation is over. The children will stay with their grandparents. I'll live in the guest room and work from home. We'll talk on Tuesday after work. Think about what you're doing to this family," I said, leaving the house. That night, I returned from dinner with my parents and children. Audrey was in the living room. "We'll talk on Tuesday," I said, and went to bed. Audrey's friends texted asking me to forgive her, calling it an innocent mistake. I made a video call and showed them evidence of the affair. They quickly apologized and hung up. I don't think Audrey heard from them again. On Tuesday evening, Audrey came home exhausted. She brought pasta from our favorite Italian restaurant and prepared a plate for me. "The days when you wonder what lies to tell your friends and family so they don't find out what a terrible person you are takes their toll," I said. "Nobody talks to me. They think I'm a monster," Audrey said. "Lies have consequences. You showed everyone there's a monster inside you," I replied. "They said you showed them photos and videos of me with my lover," Audrey said. Yes, I showed them. No one will show me this photo. Can I see it? Audrey asked. Yes, if it helps. I didn't let other copies get out. I don't want our family ridiculed, I said. Audrey looked at the photo and video. I love you so much. Can't we forget this mistake? She asked. How strong was your love for me that you had to be with someone else? I asked. I never loved him. Marriage is about shared responsibilities, trust, and fun. I was 100% responsible, trusted, and had fun with you. But you left most of the financial and family responsibilities and all the trust on me while you partied, I said. You stole my love by giving yours to someone else. How long have you known? Audrey asked quietly. 7 months, I replied. Why did you wait so long? She asked. I hoped it was a one-time mistake and you'd admit it, because you always say you love me, I said. I'm sorry, Audrey said. How can I trust you now? I asked. Because I love you, and I'm telling the truth, she replied. Is this the same truth you told me in our last 3 talks where you denied the affair? I asked. After a few minutes of silence, I asked, Audrey, what can I do to make things better? I placed an envelope on the desk in front of her. This is a post-nuptial agreement. Sign it, and I'll consider taking you back. We'll need therapy for us and the kids to make it work. I don't want to sign a post-nuptial agreement, Audrey replied. Then we're done. It seems you just want to come out of this marriage better off financially, I said. What will I get if I sign it? Audrey asked. If one of us files for divorce, I get 70% of everything. If I cheat, it's 50. 50. If you cheat, I get 85%. In all scenarios, I get full custody. Have a lawyer look at it and sign it. I need to know you're willing to sacrifice financially. How much time do I have? She asked. Until Saturday morning, I said, standing up. Aren't you going to eat? I ordered your favorite food, Audrey said. After everything you've done and all the lies, should I expect the arsenic sauce to be fresh? I asked. She started crying. Later, Audrey signed the agreement to regain some trust. The next day, I went to Audrey's office. While she was out, I met with the office manager, an elderly lady whose husband owned the company. How can I help you today? She asked angrily. I think there's a misunderstanding about me being the bad guy with my wife, I said. This seems personal. Please leave or I'll call the police, she said. It's about my wife and a coworker she's having lovemaking with, I said. Do you have any evidence? She asked. Yes, here's a photo and voice recordings of them admitting they had lovemaking instead of showing properties, I said, playing short clips. She was unhappy. Can I assume my wife will be fired immediately? I asked. Yes, along with her lover, she replied. You can't fire her lover. I had permission to record my wife, not him. This can't be shown in court, and I don't want to be accused of libel. I doubt you do either, I said. Thanks for the info, she said, relieved. Can I leave a photo? I asked. No, I don't want this passed around, she replied. Audrey came home that evening in tears. She lost her job and received no references. She wanted to talk, but I only said Saturday and went to my room. On Saturday morning, Audrey was at the kitchen table. You should have quit immediately to avoid contact with your lover. Since your moral compass is broken, we should have discussed this first, I said. Sorry, we no longer discuss decisions that negatively impact our marriage or children. By the way, have you signed the post-nuptial agreement? I asked. Yes, she said, handing me the envelope. I checked it, sent an electronic copy to my lawyer, and put the physical copy in a safe. Then I announced the new house rules. Good behavior from you, and we'll start counseling. I'll tell the family we're trying to fix our marriage. I knew it wouldn't last. I didn't even schedule counseling. Audrey was the perfect housewife, but she installed a hidden camera in my office. I watched her do it on my laptop in my car. On Saturday morning, I came to the kitchen where Audrey was drinking coffee, looking smug. We exchanged pleasantries. I took my coffee and sat opposite her. Where are the children? I asked. I took them to my parents, she replied. Why? I asked. We haven't had lovemaking in a month, and I hope to change your mind this morning, she said. Actually, it's been 8 months, I replied. 8 months? That can't be right, Audrey insisted. It is. Maybe you've lost track because of your cheating, but I'm sure, I said. Well, we could change that, she said, smiling and starting to get up. Audrey, I can't forget what you did or erase those images. It won't happen, I said, motioning for her to sit down. Fine, be stubborn. I did everything you asked, and you still treat me like a leper. I want more respect, Audrey said. Is this how you want to handle it? I asked. Yes, I deleted all your copies of the videos. I even deleted the ones in the cloud and destroyed the flash drive. I'm tired of being an outcast. I'll stay with my sister until you treat me with respect. I'll pick up the kids from school every day, and we'll have dinner at my new place without you," she said, walking to the front door. Her sister came out of the dining room, and they left together. For 2 months, Audrey worked on her parents and children, claiming I never had any records, and photos were photoshopped. She asked me to show proof, but she had deleted everything. The children were confused, and her parents wanted to believe her. Even my parents had doubts. My brother and his wife supported me completely. I felt isolated. I met her lover to arrange another video. This time I went all out. A hotel room on the beach in Florida, 2 first-class tickets, and $5,000 for the video. I insisted it be recorded on the balcony. The lover asked for more money for an expensive restaurant. Audrey and Karen were excited, so I bought another first-class ticket for Karen. 2 weeks later, I watched the new video with the lover in my car. Everything was as I asked. I encrypted the video, uploaded it to the cloud, and encrypted the flash drive. The lover asked for his money, but I had questions. "Did you approach my wife first?" I asked. "Not really. It just happened," he replied. "Who mentioned the lovemaking first?" I asked. "She did," he replied. As we drove back, I asked, "How many women have you seduced in town?" "7," he replied, listing them. All were married. I turned off the recorder in my pocket. "Want to see something crazy?" I asked, accelerating to 70 miles per hour. "Hey man, what are you doing?" he said. "Sorry, this is the crazy part," I said, steering into the trees and braking sharply. We hit a tree at less than 40 miles per hour. Both of us were hurt, but alive. I called the police to report the accident. They confiscated my laptop and flash drive as evidence. After being examined at the hospital, I went home and was sick for a week. Audrey found out about my accident when she learned of her lover's end of life. She called, trying to get information, but I acted clueless. The next day, the police questioned me about the connection between the deceased and my wife. I admitted knowing about the affair and explained that I gave him money to stay away from her, but he demanded more, leading to the accident. "So you think I deliberately crashed the car to eliminate him?" I asked. The police left soon after. I had the opportunity and motive, but who risked their life to eliminate someone by crashing a car into a tree? A few days later, Audrey called, wanting to discuss our marriage on neutral ground, with her sister present for safety. "The house is out. I don't want this conversation recorded. Let's meet at a hotel," Audrey said. I agreed, but insisted on choosing the room number. She argued about safety, but I didn't want the conversation recorded either. We agreed to meet at a hotel. On Saturday, I followed Audrey and Karen to a hotel. The receptionist offered us room 216, but I requested a higher room overlooking the front. Audrey and Karen were clearly disappointed. They'd probably have to pay again to retrieve their recording equipment from room 216. In the elevator, Karen flirted with me, pressing against my side. I told her the discussion was between me and Audrey. Karen, who usually stayed away from me on Audrey's insistence, seemed different now. The hotel room was standard with an office desk, chair, chest of drawers, and a queen-size bed. "What now?" Audrey asked. "Take off your clothes, completely unclothed." "I don't trust you, and you don't trust me," I said. Audrey looked at Karen. "That's my sister. I don't want you to see her unclothed." "Come on, she doesn't have anything most people in this town haven't seen," I said. Karen stuck her tongue out at me, revealing a piercing. "Okay," Audrey agreed too easily. "Get completely unclothed." It worked. I knew her goal. I came prepared. Audrey and Karen began undressing. I quickly undressed and folded my clothes on the desk, placing a pen behind them. The pen matched the hotel pen exactly, but had a hidden camera. When Audrey suggested the hotel, I visited every hotel and motel to get a free pen. I hollowed out a pen to fit the camera, making it heavier than a normal pen. I placed my clothes in the bathroom, keeping an eye on Audrey and Karen undressing. Then I walked back unclothed to the table and sat down. Audrey and Karen were on the bed, their clothes beside them. "Now that we're all here, let's get started," I said, trying to ignore Karen's attractive body. "Audrey, I want a serious conversation. In a few minutes, we'll know what this is really about," Audrey said sweetly. "I love you, darling." I replied, "Yes, like your favorite pair of shoes." "You know that's not true. I really love you," Audrey insisted. "Sure, as long as your credit card works," I retorted. Audrey's voice rose. "Don't be so sullen. Our marriage is strong enough to handle this." "Strong? You used all our strength to repeatedly stab me in the back and now want me to turn my back on you again?" I shot back. Don't be so melodramatic. It was a mistake, Audrey said defensively. A mistake that will end in divorce, I declared. Darling, don't be like that. It was just a little mistake, Audrey pleaded. It wasn't small. It was a calculated betrayal, I countered. In a falsetto, I mimicked, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would hurt you." Honey, I'm sorry I lied. I was ashamed. I stopped lying when you confronted me, Audrey apologized. Oh, you mean when you first denied it? Or when you called it an emotional connection? Or the third time when you admitted to just kissing him? You only stopped lying when you saw the photos. But that won't stop you from lying about other things, will it? I challenged. Karen, noticing Audrey's reaction, said, "We don't want anyone to say something they'll regret." Going too far? Are you kidding? How many boyfriends and husbands have you deceived, Karen? How many married men have you seduced? I accused. Audrey quietly said, "I'm so sorry for what I did. Feeling guilty isn't enough. My job is to help you feel it properly," I stated coldly. Audrey pitifully said, "It's not that bad. What's the difference between you and a con artist? You gained my trust to deceive me," I said. "I didn't deceive you. Marriage is a contract of fidelity and trust. You broke it," Audrey argued. "I kept my end. It was you who betrayed me," I countered. "You forced me to sign that postnuptial agreement." "That was unfair," Audrey complained. "Unfair? If I get a traffic ticket, I pay the fine. If I cheat on taxes, they take my money. If I drink too much, I go to jail. Cheaters should face consequences. Marriage is about raising a family and being faithful. Otherwise, what's the point?" I explained. Audrey was speechless. "Do you know how many marriages that start with infidelity last more than a few years? 5%? Was it your plan to divorce me and marry your lover? We'll never know, right?" "He's dead," I said, striking a nerve. Audrey's face twisted with anger. "I deleted all your evidence. You can't control me anymore. Our parents and children don't know who to believe. Was it worth it?" She spat. "I didn't destroy this marriage. You did. I'm just stating the time of end of life," I responded. Audrey angrily said, "Maybe I wouldn't have slept with someone else if you paid more attention to me." "Why should I? You didn't pay any attention to me," I replied. We sat in silence for a moment, calming down. "Did you eliminate him?" Audrey asked suddenly. I smiled at the camera hidden in the pen and said, "It was an accident." "How could you do such a thing?" Audrey tried to provoke an emotional response, but I stayed silent. Audrey's eyes filled with tears. "He was a good guy." Allowing some anger to seep into my voice, I said, "Oh, you mean those guys who seduce other people's wives?" Audrey, in tears, said, "But you still love me, I know that." Correction, I loved you. True love is a privilege most people never experience, even in marriage. You had that from me, but all I got was your desire for a husband, money, and fidelity. You threw away real love for vulgar passion. Millions will desire you for passion, but no one will love you like I did after what you did to your family and me, I said with finality. Tears streamed down Audrey's face. She quickly recovered and continued her plan, saying, "I need a drink. Anyone else? I'll go to the bar and be back to talk like adults." Audrey got dressed and left. As soon as the door closed, Karen said, "You look delicious." "Karen, now is not the time." Karen stood between my legs. "Karen, your sister will be back soon. What she doesn't know won't hurt her." I was trying to stop Karen when she suddenly pulled me onto the bed, screaming, "Please stop!" Audrey burst in, phone in hand. "What are you doing to my sister?" Karen cried. "He attacked me. Make him stop." Audrey pushed me, smiling, and dropped the phone. She picked it up, pressed the end button, and likely sent the video to the cloud. "Now you're in trouble. I have a video of you attacking her." They both laughed. I sat back in my chair looking dejected. Audrey, wagging her finger, said, "Here's how the divorce will work. No more postnuptial agreement. If you mention it, I'll send you to jail. You get 10%, I get 90%, full custody and support for life. If you don't agree, this video will send you to jail." "Yes," I replied, realizing I had underestimated Audrey. This was her main plan. Karen got dressed quickly. "Come on, Audrey." 10 minutes ago, Audrey was crying over lost love. Now she was leaving with her sister, both laughing at me. I watched from the window until they left. Then I got dressed, took my pen, and left the hotel. The meeting went better than expected. The next day, Audrey was served with divorce papers, enforcing the postnuptial agreement. When she threatened me with her recording, I said, "You didn't delete everything. If you blame me, I'll be free the next day and you'll be in jail." Audrey was smart enough to wait. We both hired lawyers. I demanded the postnuptial agreement be honored. I provided transcripts of all my recordings. My lawyer told hers we were restoring deleted records and only had transcripts for now. After much negotiation, we set a court date. The question was whether the postnuptial agreement was applicable and if I had actual records. A few days before the trial, I sent forged letters to Audrey and Karen from the CDC, stating her lover had AIDS and they should get tested immediately. They were told not to have lovemaking for 12 months until it was confirmed they were clear. On the trial day, the judge was displeased with both of us. Audrey claimed the postnuptial agreement was signed under duress and she never committed infidelity. She cried convincingly. I argued the postnuptial agreement was created because she was an adulteress, signed under divorce pressure. She violated the marriage agreement and was an unfit mother, making the agreement fair. Judge, what evidence do you have that she committed infidelity? My lawyer asked, presenting video and voice recordings to support the transcripts. The judge inquired, "Why are you producing these now?" We obtained the recordings after a long process. Audrey deleted the original transcripts. Recovering data using a certified process is time-consuming. We just got the evidence here, my lawyer explained. The judge directed the next question to me. Did Audrey delete the posts? Yes, Your Honor. We have a recording of her confessing. I convinced Audrey I had strict control over the videos. She thought she deleted everything, but I saved them in multiple places. Judges don't like evidence tampering. Audrey lied about never cheating and said I had no proof, I answered. I understand, the judge acknowledged. The judge then turned to Audrey's lawyer. Do the transcripts match the recordings? Yes, Your Honor, Audrey's lawyer confirmed. Do you challenge the recording's authenticity? The judge asked. Audrey's lawyer looked at her and she shook her head slightly. No, Your Honor, he responded. This answers the validity question and nullifies compulsion claims. But none of this proves infidelity after signing the contract, the judge noted. My lawyer intervened. Yes, Your Honor. Here is the transcript of the final video and the video itself, proving Audrey's infidelity after signing the agreement. The judge asked, why now? This evidence was in police custody as part of an accidental end-of-life investigation. We weren't sure it still existed, my lawyer clarified. Turning to Audrey's lawyer again, the judge asked, have you seen the video? Yes, but we believe it's inappropriate because there's no consent form, and if allowed, there's no evidence it wasn't recorded before the agreement, Audrey's lawyer argued. My client paid for the plane tickets for Audrey, Karen, and her lover, and the hotel room they used, my lawyer stated. The judge asked me directly, did you consent to your wife's affair? No, I never agreed or condoned her activities, I replied. Then why pay for their tickets and hotel? The judge pressed. I asked her lover how much he needed to stop dating my wife. He said $2,000, tickets to Jamaica, and a 3-night stay at a 5-star hotel. We agreed, and I bought ticket vouchers. He used the air show and hotel vouchers in Florida the following week while my wife was at a conference, I explained. How do we know this is the right hotel? The judge queried. In the first photo, you can see the hotel sign in the background, I pointed out. How did you get this video? The judge continued. I paid for it. When I found out about my wife's affairs, I asked him for proof. He provided visual evidence, I answered. Why collect this evidence? The judge asked. For divorce, I replied. Did he know why you were collecting this information? The judge asked again. Yes. Several months ago, I explained it was easier and cheaper to get testimony from him rather than a private investigator. I paid him $500 for another video, I clarified. Audrey broke the post-nuptial agreement. If you need someone to testify about the video's authenticity and date, my wife's sister is right there, I said, pointing at Karen. Everyone turned to look at her and the judge reprimanded me for using obscene language. I apologized immediately. The judge asked, is that all you got from your wife's lover that night? Looking at Audrey, I said yes, but he provided most of the records you have today. He's been doing this for months, including hotel and airfare. I paid him about $3,000. Audrey looked furious. My testimony made her realize her lover had been recording their encounters to sell to me for the divorce. For a mere $3,000, Audrey would have paid 10 times more to keep the video hidden. Though angry, I could see Audrey calculating. She believed this was all he had. If he had more, he would have produced it already. When I finished, I saw Audrey make a hasty decision. Audrey whispered to her lawyer, who then requested a break as we neared lunch. The judge allowed it. When we returned, Audrey's lawyer claimed they had a video showing me committing a crime and infidelity, which violated the postnup. Both Audrey and Karen were willing to attest to its authenticity. Audrey confirmed, my sister and I didn't want to put the father of my children in jail. But now I see how manipulative he is. The video showed the hotel door, someone screaming, "Please stop," and Audrey bursting in, showing me on top of Karen. Audrey screamed, "What are you doing to my sister?" And Karen cried, "He attacked me." Audrey then grabbed her sister, her phone fell, and the video ended. "What happened next?" the judge asked. "I locked myself in the bathroom and told my husband if he didn't leave in 2 minutes, I'd call the police. I also told him I uploaded the video to the cloud," Audrey replied. "Yes," the judge said. "I was in trouble." I saw Audrey's parents looking at me suspiciously. The judge turned to me. "What do you say in your defense?" My lawyer responded, "We have a video to refute it. Let's see it." Audrey's lawyer tried to discredit the video. "Judge, you can present your surprise video, but we can't see their rebuttal video?" The judge grinned, and Audrey's lawyer sat down. Audrey looked pale. The video started with us discussing stripping to avoid recording devices, and ended with Audrey and Karen leaving the room laughing. The judge looked at me with a sad understanding, hinting he too had suffered infidelity. Audrey whispered to her lawyer, who shook his head, "No." My lawyer confirmed that none of my statements in the video were self-incriminating. Audrey's lawyer acknowledged this on video, which must have frustrated Audrey. Her initial goal was to sweetly convince me to forgive her. Her secondary goal was to trick me into incriminating myself about her lover's end of life. The fake attack on Karen was backfiring. Karen tried to sneak away, but when the video showed her pulling me onto the bed, the bailiff sat her back down. Audrey was truly ashamed. Her parents sighed behind her. Relatives left the court before the video ended. Audrey knew she'd lost their support. The judge ruled in favor of the postnup. My lawyer then revealed Audrey's secret bank account, which had more than our combined assets. She had been depositing extra paychecks and bonuses into it for years, and had taken out a second mortgage on our house. I asked my lawyer not to tell the judge or Audrey about this. My lawyer presented my bank account balance to the judge, showing that Audrey had transferred our mortgage funds to her secret account, suggesting she planned to run. This mistake led to the discovery of Audrey's secret account. The second mortgage transfer was actually done by me using Audrey's login. I discovered her account the day I installed the monitoring program. Hidden funds not disclosed during divorce proceedings are subject to specific laws. The judge awarded me 100% of the asset and required Audrey to pay all attorney's fees and court costs. Due to her greed, she transferred all our property to her secret account, so I didn't have to pay her half the house value. The judge also sentenced Audrey and Karen to 90 days in jail for perjury. I received 95% of the property, full custody of the children, the house, 2 of our 3 best cars, and several years of alimony. Audrey got only 5%, which didn't even cover her legal fees. She kept her clothes, car, and jewelry, but I had already sold her expensive jewelry after discovering her affair. She never noticed because I stopped taking her out. I used the jewelry money and accident insurance to buy my dream car. Audrey struggled to stay close to the children and had to commute an hour for work. They never forgave her and were ashamed to be seen with her. Both she and Karen ended up working as bar waitresses. I also sent the lover's last words to 6 husbands of 7 wives. Drunken messages from Audrey occasionally appear on my phone. Sometimes she wishes I was dead and blames me for her ruined life, while other times she cries, begs for forgiveness, and hopes we can be together again. I save every message and video in case she tries to return to our children's lives. Audrey never truly loved me as I loved her. She measured life by what she could take, not give. I have a restraining order against her and her sister, as they may still harbor animosity toward me. Growing up in a small town, I admired people who overcame their circumstances to achieve greatness. My brother Jeff and I shared that admiration, though our lives were often shaped by circumstance. Watching the Maple Grove Mills, a key part of our community, decline after being taken over by outside investors was tough. As the local economy crumbled, so did the town's spirit, and I realized real change had to come from within. Years later, after establishing our careers, an opportunity arose. We co-founded Falcon Associates with Lucy, Dennis, and Marty, aiming to not just revive a business, but to restore a way of life that was disappearing. Although none of us could predict the challenges ahead, we were hopeful. We each earned $250,000 annually, reasonable for a startup in a risky industry, with standard benefits. To address Jeff's security concerns, we hired a firm for ongoing protection. Lucy and Dennis also opted to keep their families out of the public eye. In case of the worst, we all had life insurance policies worth $10 million to protect our families. I'm Roger Richardson, born and raised in Rose Valley. You'll notice I didn't call it home, and that's central to my story. Jeff and I weren't mill kids. Our parents ran Richardson's Garden, the town's only Chinese restaurant. Opened in 1947 by our grandparents, it's still operated by our mom today. My grandfather, a veteran and son of Portland restaurateurs, saw an opportunity in Rose Valley to open a place catering to soldiers returning from the Pacific who craved Asian flavors. The restaurant originally kept some of the menu from the coffee shop it replaced, including the famous fried chicken recipe, which is still served every Friday. My grandparents lived above the restaurant until they built a house and tea garden behind it after my dad was born. When Grandpa passed and Grandma retired, my parents took over, and Jeff and I spent our childhood afternoons there under Grandma's care. My childhood friend, Kathy Henderson, lived next door to my grandparents' house. Her father was a sheriff's deputy, and her mom worked part-time at Richardson's Garden. When we were kids, Kathy told her mom she would marry me someday, and we did. We stayed close through school, and after Kathy graduated, we both went to Portland State University. In 2001, I earned my MBA, Kathy got her accounting degree, and Jeff passed the Oregon bar. We all returned to Rose Valley to start our careers. Jeff as a lawyer, Kathy as an accountant for Maple Grove, and me as an engineer. Kathy and I had been unofficially engaged since childhood, but we made it official after returning home, getting married that September. In 2002, tragedy struck. Kathy's dad was eliminated in an accident, and later that year, my dad passed away from pancreatic cancer. Our moms decided to live together, and Kathy and I moved into my childhood home, where we started our family. Our daughter, Lana, was born on October 24th, 2003. She was perfect. Rose Valley had always seemed insulated from national economic swings, especially with Maple Grove Mills producing goods people always needed. However, when the housing crisis hit, even our town felt the impact. Though we didn't have the large homes sprouting up elsewhere, many locals were lured into refinancing at low rates, only to find themselves in deep debt when the bubble burst in 2008. That's when Daniel Moore, president of Moore Equity Partners, appeared. His private equity firm offered to buy Maple Grove Mills, promising salvation for those struggling with mortgages. The town split between those supporting and opposing the buyout. I was against it, believing Congress might offer relief soon and that Moore's offer undervalued the company. Plus, Moore himself came off as arrogant, and something about him felt off. Despite these concerns, most people voted for the sale, enticed by the money that would help pay off their debts. In October 2008, Maple Grove Mills became Maple Grove Inc., ending its 102-year local ownership. Problems began right away. Local farmers were forced to lower prices, quality control issues emerged, and even the packaging suffered. Yet management claimed everything was fine because profits and sales were up. I couldn't understand how such poor management could still run a profitable company. My concerns grew, and I began to question if I should leave and help my mom run Richardson's Garden instead. Kathy, my wife, didn't share my worries, insisting it wasn't our responsibility as employees to care about the company's direction, as long as paychecks kept coming. Our conversations about work became fewer, and Kathy wasn't happy about my thoughts of quitting. Meanwhile, Lana's solution to my frustrations was hosting tea parties with her dolls, which always made me smile. In January 2009, a new president took office, and the government rolled out programs to help homeowners. While some still debate whether these programs worked, I remain frustrated that we couldn't convince the mill's employees to hold out and try for a better solution. By summer 2009, it was clear this wasn't just another recession. The economy was in free fall, and despite reporting record profits, Maple Grove started laying off employees for the first time since the Great Depression. Management assured us the layoffs wouldn't be long-term and that severance benefits would help. However, it was clear that the 30% let go were mostly those who had opposed the sale to Moore Equity Partners. "You'll get your kitchen job after all," Kathy mocked as we waited for my turn to be fired. I ignored her, focusing instead on spending time with Lana. When HR called me, I told Sharon, the manager, to skip the severance talk. I refused to sign the non-disclosure agreement or waiver. Sharon, who had also voted against the buyout, understood my frustration. We parted on good terms, and I invited her to dinner at the restaurant sometime. After leaving, I picked Lana up from school. Kathy didn't answer her phone, so I called her and Lana's grandmothers to let them know they wouldn't need to pick Lana up. Something felt off when I got home, and I soon found Kathy's note on the kitchen table. She said she was leaving me for someone better, taking Lana, and if I didn't sign the divorce papers, I'd never see my daughter again. I immediately called Jeff, telling him what happened. He urged me to leave the house and bring the note to his office. Once there, Jeff and his boss, Alex, quickly read the note. Alex explained that Kathy's plan had failed. She intended to take Lana while I was busy in an exit interview, probably heading out of state. Jeff asked if I knew who she was leaving me for, but I had no idea. Likely one of the managers Moore had brought in, though Kathy never mentioned names. Alex reassured me that Oregon law prioritizes the child's best interests, not the parent's gender, and that Kathy's threat would work against her in court. He explained that since Lana was with me and we had a strong family support system, Kathy's note would backfire. Threatening to withhold a child to force a spouse to sign divorce papers would be a major strike against her in custody decisions. We filed a counterclaim, arguing that Kathy's plan to take our daughter and use threats to force my signature on the divorce papers proved she shouldn't have custody. Since I left work early and picked up Lana, her plan failed. The court granted me temporary custody, and we prepared for a legal fight. It wasn't long before Kathy's someone better was revealed, Daniel Moore. Not surprising, right? Moore's arrogance and wealth worked against him in court. Jeff became my lead attorney, with Alex advising. The sight of Moore's expensive legal team trying to bulldoze a small-town lawyer representing a newly unemployed father fighting for his daughter didn't sit well with the judge. Kathy's own mother testified in my favor, offering to help me care for Lana, and her support sealed the case. When Kathy's threatening note was shown in court, Moore's lawyers looked visibly uncomfortable. The judge took Kathy's note at face value, ruling that she'd given up her claim to any marital assets. Our house and family business were in my mom's name, so the assets were limited to cars, IRAs, and bank accounts. More importantly, the judge agreed that Kathy's threat showed she didn't have Lana's best interests in mind. I was granted full custody of Lana, with Kathy allowed supervised visitation. Moore showed up on the last day of the trial, expecting victory, but left looking shocked and defeated. That night, we closed the restaurant to celebrate privately. I spent most of it comforting Kathy's mother, Nancy, who had supported me in court. A few weeks later, Kathy married Daniel Moore and moved to Los Angeles. Though she flew back to Oregon for weekly visits with Lana, things were difficult. Kathy and her mom often got into shouting matches during the visits, and after one especially bad argument, Nancy banned her from the house. We moved visits to the restaurant, where Kathy's mother would sit outside, keeping a close eye on her. My idea of returning to the restaurant full-time was premature. With my mom still running it, and no plans to retire, I wasn't needed. Then, my former boss from Maple Grove, Marty, who was also fired, stopped by to discuss starting a new business with other ex-managers. I immediately agreed to join them. The idea behind our new business, Falcon, was to unite the suppliers that Maple Grove had dropped or lowballed and create a cooperative. We aimed to produce high-quality products and sell them to boutique natural food retailers who were rejecting Maple Grove's lower-quality goods. Our advantage was the good relationships we had built as the former management team at Maple Grove. Since we weren't operational yet, Marty would handle production when the time came. My role was to apply my MBA, drafting a business plan to secure funding and a marketing plan to convince suppliers we could sell what we produced. Then I got the call. "Roger!" Jeff shouted when I picked up. "What's going on?" I asked, worried by his tone. "Kathy tried to take Lana. Nancy tried to stop her, and now both are in the hospital. It's bad, Roger. You need to get here." I dropped everything and sped home, with Jeff filling me in. Kathy had tried to take Lana during her visit. When Nancy intervened, Kathy's driver pepper-sprayed her. Despite being in pain, Nancy chased after them. When Lana saw her grandma fall, she broke free and ran back, but she was struck by a truck. The driver wasn't at fault. He just couldn't stop in time. Nancy died in the ER, and Lana lingered in a coma for 8 days before passing. She would have turned 7 the next month. After that, I shut down emotionally. I vaguely remember the doctor telling us Lana was gone, then somehow finding myself in the restaurant kitchen days later cutting up a chicken without remembering how I got there. My family watched over me, making sure I didn't hurt myself. Arrangements were made for both funerals. I learned Nancy had named me her next of kin and left everything to Lana and me in her will. As her only son-in-law, and with no sons of her own, I was responsible for her final arrangements. I couldn't live in the house anymore. It was too painful. I moved into Jeff's apartment, and Gene moved into the house, as he needed to be close to the restaurant. Mom stayed with me most of the time, but returned to the house to sleep. Kathy and her driver were arrested at the scene. Witnesses told the police what had happened. The DA charged Kathy with first-degree custodial interference and the driver with second-degree hijacking. The driver was also charged with third-degree attack for pepper spraying Nancy. Because these were felonies, they both faced 2 counts of felony liquidation for the end of lives of Nancy and Lana, with sentences of up to 25 years. At the arraignments, Jeff and Alex presented Kathy's prior threat to take Lana and the fact that she had left me for a wealthy, out-of-state man whose driver was involved. The judge deemed both Kathy and the driver flight risks and denied bail. The DA warned us they might not be convicted but expected a plea deal. Jeff asked if Moore's involvement could be proven, but the DA doubted it. They tried offering leniency in exchange for implicating Moore, but neither Kathy nor the driver cooperated. In the end, they pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree manslaughter and received concurrent sentences, eligible for parole after serving 6 years. I didn't submit a sufferer statement at their sentencing. While some feel satisfaction or closure after a sentencing, I felt nothing. The following months were a blur, with time flying when I was working and crawling when I wasn't. Nights were the hardest, and I buried myself in work to cope. One day, while working in the tea garden, I received a call from a woman named Sophie Soulis, asking to speak with me on behalf of Eamon Soulis, a billionaire shipping magnate. Eamon wanted to discuss a partnership, so I agreed to meet him. 3 days later, I checked into Timberline Lodge. There was a message waiting for me, inviting me to dinner at a nearby luxury condo. When I arrived, I was greeted by Eamon and Sophie, his daughter-in-law. After dinner, Eamon explained that he and Sophie had their own experience with Daniel Moore. Eamon believed Moore was responsible for his son Armand's liquidation. Armand Souli had risen from humble beginnings, amassing a fortune through illegal means before changing his ways to win the love of his wife, Manon. She inspired him to dedicate his wealth to good causes, founding the Manon Soulis Foundation to combat poverty and exploitation. After her end of life, their son Andre took over the foundation. The foundation became involved in negotiations in the impoverished state of San Lawrence, where a deal was being made to fund schools and hospitals in exchange for granting over 500,000 acres of rainforest to an energy and mining cartel. The foundation proposed an alternative plan, funding fewer schools, but protecting the land from deforestation and exploitation. The president of San Lawrence had welcomed Andre Soulis for a summit with local officials and tribal leaders. However, their plane disappeared over the rainforest, and shortly after, the vice president took over as president. The disappearance was blamed on eco-terrorists, and negotiations with the Soulis Foundation ended abruptly. The deal with the mining cartel, funded by more equity partners, was quickly pushed through, leading to the destruction of the rainforest. "You saw that coming, didn't you?" Eamon said bitterly. He believed Moore's money had motivated the vice president, though he blamed the new president for his son's end of life. I recalled Jeff's words to our DA about Moore being behind my family's tragedy. Eamon admitted he wanted revenge but resisted because his late wife Manon and son wouldn't have approved. Sophie, his daughter-in-law, also firmly opposed any violent actions. Eamon shared a photo of his grandchildren, explaining that yielding to his darker instincts could cost him his relationship with them. When I asked why we were meeting, Eamon explained that Sophie had agreed he needed to act, but within legal and ethical bounds. Sophie then presented a folder detailing Moore's destructive business practices, including his acquisition of a bakery in Illinois. After initial growth, the company collapsed, leaving hundreds jobless, part of a pattern seen with other companies, including Maple Grove Mills. Eamon's proposal was clear. Someone needed to rescue these companies and prove that businesses could succeed with integrity. He suggested I take the lead, using my experience battling Moore in the divorce and custody case as a public face. Eamon and Sophie couldn't act directly, as it would look like rich people playing with businesses, but I could step in as someone with a personal stake. Skeptical, I asked if we could really succeed. Eamon pointed out that we were already trying to start a business based on integrity. He offered to provide the resources, ensuring the rescued companies wouldn't fail, unlike Moore's ventures. Sophie clarified that they wouldn't fake profits like Moore, but truly support the company's growth. Eamon promised that even if the venture ultimately failed, workers would benefit from restored jobs and a soft landing. I agreed to discuss the plan with my associates, ensuring complete transparency with them. The Falcon Group consisted of 4 members: Marty Ball, my former Maple Grove manager; Lucy Armstrong, Kathy's ex-manager in finance; Dennis McCoy, Maple Grove's former tech manager, and me. We hadn't yet decided on my role beyond drafting business and marketing plans. Jeff and Alex were involved for legal counsel, as they would handle our legal affairs if we officially became a business. We met at the restaurant, reviewing the proposal from Timberline while having dinner. Marty and Lucy were impressed, while Dennis agreed as he sampled a new dish. Lucy questioned the legality, and Alex explained that, as a privately owned company, the plan was legal, as long as no false claims were made to investors or lenders. Marty noted this clarified my role in Falcon as heading business development and marketing, though Jeff expressed concern. He pointed out that Eamon wanted me as the public face of the venture, which could put me in Moore's crosshairs if we succeeded in tarnishing his reputation. Jeff's worries were valid, but we moved forward regardless. We drafted a counter-proposal addressing these concerns, and our group, including Jeff and Alex, returned to meet with Eamon and Sophie to finalize the details. Falcon Associates was established as a New Mexico Anonymous LLC, where the owners' identities remained private. Jeff and Alex would represent us individually, while a separate attorney would serve as corporate counsel. Eamon and Sophie owned 50% of the company, and the four of us owned the other 50%, ensuring no single party had control. We agreed to make decisions as a unified block. Externally, we would appear as employees of Falcon, Marty as Director of Operations, Lucy as Director of Finance, Dennis as Director of Technology, and I as Managing Director. Whether I would also lead business development and marketing was undecided until we understood the resources available in the companies we aimed to rebuild. We set equal salaries of $250,000 per year, reasonable for a high-risk startup. We also arranged standard executive benefits and a 24/7 security hotline for our families. Lucy and Dennis opted to stay out of the public eye due to their families, and each of us had a $10 million life insurance policy for worst-case scenarios. A week after signing the agreements, Eamon informed us our salaries and benefits were in effect, and Falcon had $100 million in working capital with a $100 million reserve. Lucy was stunned when the financial statement arrived. It was a fraction of Eamon's wealth, but more than any of us had ever expected to manage. 3 weeks later, the Illinois Baking Company closed, leaving 316 workers unemployed. Soon after, Falcon Associates LLC successfully bid to acquire Pathway Bakeries, Inc. for $28 million, with plans to reopen the facility by mid-December. Falcon's managing director, Roger Richardson, stated their goal was to rebuild Pathway with a focus on people and quality, correcting the toxic culture under its previous owners. Falcon's acquisition was big news in Kelton, Illinois, a town hit hard by job losses since 2007. Former Pathway workers, like Rena and Andy Dean, felt betrayed by more equity partners, who had promised work before suddenly shutting down the plant. Now, just before Christmas, Falcon had acquired the plant and planned a public meeting to discuss its future. At the meeting, held at Kelton High School, the 600-seat auditorium was packed, with many attendees bringing their families. Former employees had each received an envelope, which they were instructed to open during the meeting. Inside were rehire letters offering them their jobs back, along with a $1,500 prepaid Visa card to help with holiday expenses. Roger Richardson, along with Marty Ball, explained that while the plant wouldn't be operational by Christmas due to neglected equipment, employees would return to work in stages starting in 2 weeks. Health insurance benefits had already been reinstated, and all salaries and seniorities would be preserved. The crowd responded with cheers, applause, and tears of relief. The night ended with a buffet in the school gym, where Falcon Associates officially welcomed back the Pathway workers and their families. I couldn't resist one more jab during interviews after the meeting, highlighting how the new Pathway would succeed on quality and integrity, everything the previous owners lacked. That evening, we shook hands with soon-to-be employees and their families who just weeks earlier had lost hope. Seeing the change in their eyes was uplifting. As we headed to the hotel, Marty asked, "Think any of this is getting back to Moore?" "No clue," I replied, "but it feels pretty good." Headline: Falcon gifts displaced Pathway workers, $1,500. December 12th, 2011, Kelton Record, Falcon Associates surprised former Pathway workers by giving them $1,500 Visa gift cards. Falcon, based in Albuquerque, plans to reopen the Kelton Bakery next week, initially hiring 70 workers, with hopes of rehiring all 300 by February. Mary Gladden, a former employee, was brought to tears by the unexpected generosity. "I didn't think I could give my kids much this Christmas. Now I can." Falcon's announcement made headlines nationwide. Videos from the meeting went viral, and news stories popped up with titles like Pathway Rises from the Ashes and Miracle on Kelton Boulevard. One article even dubbed me the new George Bailey, while Daniel Moore was portrayed as Scrooge McMoore. Unsurprisingly, media attention turned to who we were. The press unearthed my divorce from Kathy, her marriage to Daniel Moore, and the tragic end of lives of Lana and Nancy. Although I declined to discuss my personal tragedy, we knew the story would eventually surface. It had all the elements of a soap opera. A wealthy millionaire fires a third of a town's workers, seduces a fired worker's wife, loses in court, and is ultimately linked to a tragic hijacking attempt that ends in 2 end-of-lives. Then the fired worker and his former colleagues start a new company and rescue another community left jobless by the same millionaire. You couldn't script it better. Some stories were tough to watch, especially one that revisited the site where Lana and Nancy were eliminated. I had to turn it off when the reporter filmed the small family altar inside the restaurant, where my mom burns incense in front of photos of my grandparents, Dad, Lana, and Nancy. Jeff denied involvement in the ambush interview that confronted Moore outside his LA condo, where a reporter asked if he felt responsible for Lana and Nancy's end-of-lives or Kathy's imprisonment. Moore's angry response, yelling something about failing and losers, was the hardest hit he'd taken yet. If Jeff did have a hand in it, I could live with that. The question of whether I would be just the face of the new Pathway or take on a hands-on role in business development, marketing, and sales was answered with a clear yes. Pathway's former non-Moore managers were eager to return, but they needed guidance to shift from restoring the old Pathway to building a new one that could address modern markets. Since I had been the one to present the $1,500 gift cards and make promises about rebuilding together, it naturally fell to me to rally the team and get them excited about the future. It took 4 months to get the Pathway plant fully operational due to years of neglect under Moore's management. We faced safety violations, deferred maintenance, and had to replace outdated equipment. We also upgraded the office tech, replacing all the computers and saving the hard drives for a secret data project. The rest was donated to local schools and nonprofits. We invested in our workforce as well. Employees who hadn't yet returned full-time received training, either to update their skills or prepare for new equipment, like robots. When asked if robots would lead to job cuts, Marty explained the goal was higher output with the same workforce, much like in the past, when output doubled without increasing headcount. Concerns about selling more Pathway products after the decline in quality were addressed by focusing on rebuilding trust with former customers. Our message, Pathway is back and better than ever. We also expanded into new markets like organics, sugar-free, gluten-free, and grain-free products, which had been ignored under Moore's management, but were now growing in demand. As it turned out, the U.S. gluten-free market grew by over 60% in the next 4 years. Our gluten-free product line, launched in summer 2012, accounted for nearly a third of our revenue, cementing my reputation within Pathway's marketing team. Meanwhile, Maple Grove Mills, having let go of the marketing analysts we hired as consultants, completely missed the gluten-free boom. The first year of New Pathway felt like my time working on the Falcon Cooperative, but on a much larger scale. Instead of driving around Oregon and Washington building relationships, I was flying across the U.S., working on new and renewed partnerships for Pathway. Many of these renewals were with businesses the old Pathway had alienated due to poor quality, late shipments, and billing issues. Even though we rehired Pathway's marketing and sales teams, many clients insisted on hearing directly from me, the new managing director, that the problems under Moore's ownership were gone. I never missed the chance to emphasize that we were a new company, completely separate from Moore's Pathway. The PR efforts paid off. Sales began to rise, and we signed contracts to produce store-branded products. While this might seem like competition for our own products, the store brands didn't cost us anything for distribution or advertising, so the profit margins were nearly the same. Our business plan was working. We held 2 meetings each quarter. The Pathway meeting included the entire company, where senior management met in the boardroom, and everyone else could log in online. Though not required as a private company, we valued transparency. The Falcon meeting was private, just the 4 of us, Eamon, Sophie, and our legal team. Eamon, as the majority shareholder, could have led these meetings, but he and Sophie preferred to remain silent partners, so we rotated the responsibility. At our 3rd meeting, marking 1 year since Falcon Associates was formed, Lucy chaired the session. After reviewing the usual updates, sales, plant performance, morale, and tech projects, Lucy revealed the financials. Pathway would end Q4 in the black, a year ahead of projections. This surprise came from an unplanned contract with Champion Markets. I had met their CEO at a trade show and pitched our private label services. When Champion expanded into the Southwest, their existing supplier became overwhelmed, so we took over their hard-baked snack line. It was a win-win with no job losses, and the deal looked promising for long-term success. The new Pathway's first holiday party was on December 21st, 2012, our last workday of the year. The company provided the main dishes, and employees brought potluck items. Families and kids were invited, with someone dressed as Santa, not me. We screened It's a Wonderful Life in the conference room, and I jokingly told the kids that Mr. Potter's first name was Daniel. Never miss an opportunity. After a gift exchange, under $20, gag gifts encouraged, we held a prize drawing and packed up leftovers for people to take home. Before everyone left, I announced, "We appreciate all your hard work this year, and when you receive your final checks, there will be a little extra." Applause followed. "It's not a Christmas bonus," I added. "It's profit sharing." Headline: Falcon shares profits with Pathway workers. December 24th, 2012, Kelton Record. A cheer erupted at Pathway's holiday party when Falcon Associates Managing Director, Roger Richardson, announced a profit-sharing bonus. Each employee received $500. Pathway employs 325 full-time workers. "As a private company, we don't disclose earnings," Richardson said, "but this year's profits are being shared equally among all employees to show our appreciation for their hard work. We are building a new Pathway from the ruins of its predecessor." Never miss an opportunity. The next shot in our battle with Daniel Moore came unexpectedly. After Maple Grove Mills laid off 150 workers, businesses in Rose Valley felt the impact, especially restaurants. I used some of my Falcon salary to help cover bills at Richardson's Garden, and my mom and cousin Jean had health insurance through Falcon. In January, Jeff told me about a strange pattern at the restaurant. Fired Maple Grove employees were coming in more often and buying takeout for their friends still working at the mill. Mom learned that Richardson's Garden had been removed from Maple Grove's list of approved caterers, with management implying there would be repercussions for employees who continued to patronize the restaurant. Rumor had it that this decision came after Daniel Moore threw a tantrum, shouting he would ruin those chinks. I shared this with Eamon and Sophie, and Eamon called a teleconference. "I think we're getting to him," I said. Jeff agreed. Eamon raised a concern about security. We decided to bring in Gray Bear Security, who specialized in blending into their surroundings while providing protection. We hired a new waiter for Richardson's Garden, a retired Navy chief named Duke, pronounced Duque, who also drove for Mom and moved into a spare room at her house to assist her if needed. According to Mom, Duke was an excellent waiter and driver. Eamon made some calls, and a TV chef who featured small-town eateries came to Rose Valley. He visited local spots, including a breakfast house, brewery, and an artisan baker who praised his stone-ground flour from a historic grist mill. The crew deliberately showed the chef driving past Maple Grove Mills without stopping, but they highlighted Richardson's Garden. Mom and Jean impressed the chef with special dishes from their secret Chinese menu, turning the restaurant into a minor gourmet destination. The extra business more than made up for the loss caused by Moore's attempted embargo. Word got back that Moore was furious that Richardson's Garden wasn't struggling but had actually expanded its staff. Jeff and Alex hired a new paralegal, a former deputy sheriff who lost her job when a county bond failed. She rented a room from Alex and his wife and carpooled with them. Meanwhile, Marty, Lucy, and Dennis opted against full-time security, but added someone to the Pathway security team. They also hired a nanny to shuttle their kids between school and home, helping them manage their busy work-from-home schedules. I hired an executive assistant, Rebecca Sullivan, a former Navy NCO who had handled maltreatment from a superior officer by putting him in the hospital. Her story of taking him down impressed both Marty and me. Marty said, "She's perfect for you," comparing her attitude toward power misusers to mine when talking about Moore. Rebecca was highly competent as an assistant, and while I wasn't eager to test her bodyguard skills, her presence was reassuring. Rebecca and Dave Simpson, the new security guard at the executive office, moved into condos in the same complex where Marty and I lived. They integrated into our work and lives seamlessly, with Rebecca and I carpooling to work, supposedly to save gas. Rebecca's arrival also resolved a staffing issue. Maureen, who had been supporting both Marty and me, was reallocated solely to Marty, who was now Pathway's general manager after its previous manager, Harry, retired due to health issues. This left Rebecca to fully assist me with my cross-country duties as managing director of Falcon and Pathway. When I asked Rebecca how much she knew about our operations, she surprised me by revealing that Gray Bear Security, her employer, was a subsidiary of Global Maritime Protection Services, owned by the Sulis Shipping Group. I should have expected that connection. The rest of Q1 2013 was steady, with monthly financial improvements. If we maintained this pace, we'd be a $10 million company by year-end, though we were mostly restoring Pathway to where it had been before Moore's mismanagement. Despite this progress, our only notable victory against Moore was his failed embargo on Richardson's garden. We knew we needed to escalate things to the next level. An opportunity soon presented itself. Westover Foods, Inc., Phil Barnes explained at our Q1 Falcon meeting, makes Marvel bread and Happy Snack cakes. Management has drained it financially while promising to maintain the pension fund. This month, they reneged on the pension, violating the union contract. If the union refuses contract changes, the company will go under. But they'll keep the pension. If they accept, the company fails anyway, and they lose everything. Bankruptcy seems inevitable, Lucy said. Phil confirmed the union had voted down the new contract. 2 bids are in, $680 million for Happy, likely a done deal. More Equity Partners is the sole bidder for Marvel at $30 million. They won't like that, Dennis noted. They don't, Phil agreed, which is why they approached us. They like what we're doing with Pathway. If we take over Marvel, they'll make compensation concessions to keep the pension fund intact. Bidding against Moore takes things up a notch, I said. Do we know what it would take to outbid him? Iman asked, Phil replied. Moore's bid was a take it or leave it offer. He's publicly claimed Marvel is a loser, and he's the only one who can fix it. So just bidding makes him look bad, I reasoned, and forces him to reconsider his offer. But could we save another company? Falcon Associates buys Marvel bread from Westover Foods, April 9, 2013. Food business news. Falcon Associates has purchased Marvel Bread Company assets for $43.85 million. The acquisition includes 4 brands, 5 baking plants, and 11 depots, expanding Pathway's distribution into the Pacific Northwest and Midwest. A week later, we flew to Portland for Marvel's first all-employee meeting. Gray Bear Security handled our travel, and we were greeted by security at the airport. The meetings were more straightforward than Pathway's debut, as the unions had initiated our involvement. Marvel's workers wanted to meet us face-to-face to hear our plans. Half of Marvel's 430 employees attended in person, while the rest joined via video conference. We discussed our success with Pathway and assured them that Marvel products would be distributed alongside Pathway's. The turning point came when I mentioned growing up in Oregon eating Marvel's Pioneer Trail honey butter bread. I vowed to make sure it didn't disappear, which seemed to reassure them. Afterward, we toured the Portland, Anchorage, Spokane, and Billings plants. Marty returned to Kelton, while the rest of us flew back to Portland, where we were picked up for the drive to Rose Valley. Lucy and Dennis worked remotely from Rose Valley, traveling to Illinois as needed. Meanwhile, my extended absences made me realize that spending time in Rose Valley was difficult. Every visit pulled me back into painful memories of the past. I hoped that bringing work and Rebecca along would help me focus on the present. Rebecca, my executive assistant, insisted on staying in my apartment's second bedroom over the restaurant. Mom didn't seem to mind. She might have even thought having someone new around was a good thing after Kathy. One night, I woke up to find Rebecca next to me. She explained that I had been shouting in my sleep, calling out for Lana and Kathy, and she had stayed to comfort me. She thought I might have PTSD and urged me to talk to someone. Later, as we reviewed notes from the Marvel meetings, Rebecca asked how I managed to inspire hope in others while struggling with my own pain. I had no answer. The rest of my visit to Rose Valley felt uncomfortable, haunted by bad memories at every turn. By the time I left, it was clear that Rose Valley was no longer my home. Rebecca was right. I needed help. When you're the managing director of a company in the spotlight and featured on Fortune, seeking help for potential PTSD isn't as simple as calling your insurance's provider list. Even though Falcon's success was a team effort, I was the public face, and any perception of instability could damage our business and damage our fight against Daniel Moore. Naturally, Eamon had a connection. After some calls, I saw a doctor in Chicago. The diagnosis confirmed Rebecca's suspicion. I had PTSD, mainly from unresolved grief over my daughter and anger at my ex-wife, with my worst episodes triggered by visits to Rose Valley. But my PTSD wasn't the only issue. I was also dealing with chronic stress from work, responsibility for hundreds of jobs, and the constant presence of bodyguards. On top of that, I showed signs of depression. I left the doctor with medication and a stress management plan, returning for bi-weekly therapy. We didn't have to save another company to meet Sophie's condition about avoiding damage to innocence. We just had to save jobs. Marvel turned out to be easier to rebuild than Pathway, as Westover's equity group had ignored it while gutting Happy Brands. Marvel's regional bread brands were growing, especially in the Pacific Northwest. The depots we acquired helped expand Pathway's distribution, which was already riding high from the nationwide attention we got after acquiring Pathway and giving out Christmas bonuses. The grassroots support boosted demand, and we had to add shifts to meet orders for the holidays, making it the biggest Christmas in Pathway's history. The concessions Marvel's union made allowed us to equalize pay across all Falcon divisions, and once that was done, the union concessions were lifted. The unions representing Marvel, Westover, and Pathway employees eventually merged and negotiated as one, making it easier for us to handle contracts nationwide. Marvel bread, combined with therapy, was good for me. By the end of December, my blood pressure had dropped 20%, and I had learned to redirect my dreams to happier memories of my daughter. We all celebrated a happy new year in 2014. Well, maybe not everyone. Our first quarterly meeting of 2014 went smoothly. Sales were up, plants were performing well, and employee morale was strong. Then, we got the results from our secret data project. When Falcon acquired Pathway, we inherited not just its physical assets, but its intellectual property, including old data. Dennis's team had been working for years to recover deleted data from the servers and backups, some of which Moore's people had carelessly left behind when they wiped the hard drives. It turns out Moore had used Pathway's finances to commit fraud, shifting money around to make the company look profitable. We found emails, account numbers for offshore accounts, and records linking him to schemes at other companies like Wilson Energy and Paulson Mining. Even more shocking, Dennis uncovered records showing that Moore orchestrated the financial distress of Rose Valley homeowners to force a buyout of Maple Grove Mills. His group had issued toxic mortgages to residents, pushing more than 60% of the town's homeowners underwater, effectively ruining the lives of many in order to seize control of the company. We handed all the data over to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the FTC, the SEC, the IRS, and other agencies. On April 12, 2014, charges were brought against Daniel Moore and Moore Equity Partners for fraud, tax evasion, and running a $3.2 billion scam. Moore had falsified revenues to secure loans and used fraudulent money to pay off earlier lenders. The IRS uncovered offshore accounts and layers of companies used to hide the stolen money. The SEC sought the return of Moore's ill-gotten gains while the DOJ froze his assets. A court hearing was scheduled for December, and the IRS requested the asset freeze continue. The trials lasted over a year, during which Moore repeatedly claimed the evidence against him was faked. Dennis and Lucy testified about recovering Pathway's data, and Moore's defense couldn't explain how fake data included real offshore bank accounts in places like the Bahamas and Luxembourg, holding over $1 billion that were never reported to the IRS. On June 24, 2015, Moore was sentenced to 60 years in prison for fraud and tax evasion. He had founded Moore Equity Partners in 1985, which owned 5 companies at its peak. Moore was convicted of falsifying revenues to secure loans, using fraudulently obtained money to pay off earlier debts, and hiding the proceeds to evade taxes. He was ordered to pay $3.2 billion in restitution. In addition to Moore, 7 partners and over a dozen employees were also indicted. They either pled guilty or were convicted after testifying against Moore. However, we were disappointed when the DOJ classified Moore's carnivory mortgage scheme in Rose Valley as a civil violation, with no criminal charges. The government seized $2.8 billion in assets, including offshore accounts, properties, and personal items. Falcon Associates received a whistleblower award from the IRS for 30% of the recovered amount. At an estimated $960 million, it would be the largest award in history once the assets were fully liquidated. Our plan to take down Daniel Moore by reviving the businesses he ruined would result in nearly $600 million in profit. My ex-wife, who had worked in Maple Grove Mills' finance department under Moore, was not charged. She kept $500,000, a $1.6 million LA condo, and some cars. Until her release from prison, her assets were managed by a court-appointed guardian. Eamon Sulis passed away peacefully on October 2, 2015 at age 91. Though no evidence linked Moore to the end of life of Eamon's son, Andre, we hope that seeing Moore imprisoned brought Eamon some closure. His memorial was a private affair, with only his daughter-in-law Sophie, his grandchildren, and close friends. We didn't attend, as he had wanted to keep his connection to Falcon Associates secret to protect us all. Media reports stated that Eamon left millions to charity, with his shipping empire going to his daughter-in-law and grandchildren. Several weeks after his will was read, we met Sophie at the Timberline condominium. Eamon bequeathed his share in Falcon Associates to me, Sophie said, ensuring we remained business partners. She handed us a financial statement revealing that Falcon's value had reached $1 billion, making each of our shares worth over $200 million. Eamon's final investment, Sophie confirmed. He told me that Falcon was the project he was most proud of, even though no one outside this room would ever know he funded it. Sophie also gave us a letter from Eamon. In it, he expressed gratitude for our friendship and for helping him find redemption. He ended the letter with a simple request: save as many of them as you can. Sophie smiled as I finished reading. So, she asked, who are we saving next? A few months later, Falcon Associates finalized the purchase of More Equity Partners assets on December 4, 2015, acquiring Wilson Energy, Paulson Mining, and Maple Grove Mills for about $528 million. Moore's operations at Wilson and Paulson were built on environmental destruction and displacing indigenous communities, I said, as Falcon's managing director. We will end these practices immediately and work to reverse the damage. Maple Grove Mills will also be restored to its former reputation for quality. Falcon Associates will uphold the highest standards of business integrity. We discovered that Wilson and Paulson were mostly holding companies used by Moore to defraud investors. Thankfully, their promises of mass rainforest destruction were just another fraud. When we canceled the San Lorenz rainforest deal and cut ties with the thugs hired to intimidate indigenous tribes, we found only about 200 actual employees between both companies. While we weren't eager to save jobs designed for destruction, we offered them a chance to work on Falcon Environmental Group's new South American restoration project. This project was a huge risk, as no one had successfully replanted such a large section of deforested rainforest. However, it attracted top environmental scientists, and if we succeeded, it could create numerous jobs in environmental restoration. That brings us to today. I'm sitting in a warehouse at Maple Grove Mills, the only place large enough to hold all current and former employees and their families. We've set up a stage, and around 70% of Rose Valley's population is here, waiting to hear from us. We'll start with our Falcon message: success through quality and integrity. We'll remind them that Maple Grove was once a place of respect, fairness, and high standards, and that we can make it that way again. Rebuilding Maple Grove won't be like saving Pathway, Marvel, or even Wilson and Paulson. Those companies' workers were united, but here, a third of Maple Grove's staff were pushed out 4 years ago, not just for a short time. We hired many of them as Falcon consultants and helped others find jobs at Marvel, and while we'll offer them positions at Maple Grove again, not everyone may want to return. Those who do might still feel resentment toward their neighbors and coworkers, even family, who cashed in and sold out the heart of our town. I get it. I'm one of them. Just as I faced my own demons, we all need to confront what happened here. If we don't, it'll eat away at us. I'm going to speak openly about what we let happen, the cost, and how we must work together to rebuild our community. Yes, I said our hometown. As Falcon's public face, I've become a symbol of the pain this town has endured. To make any difference, I have to come back and help make Rose Valley home again. Because if we can't do that, the person who tore it apart still wins. If you're wondering if my story has a happy ending, you're not alone. Sure, I went from being jobless to becoming a partner in a billion-dollar business. My ex-wife is serving her sentence, and the villain is a broke convict likely spending life in prison. Over 1,000 workers across several states see me as their savior. But I'd trade all of it to hold my daughter again. There's a part of me that success and justice can't heal. As for love, it's going to take a long time, if ever, before I go down that road again. Still, life goes on, and I have plenty to keep me occupied. So maybe there isn't a clear ending. I can't say I'm happy, but I have a purpose. And for now, that's enough. Maybe there's hope after all.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
It was a long drive from the airport to my house, and my mind was racing as I navigated the freeway. Let me backtrack to explain what had me thinking so hard. I'd been in Denver all week for a conference, and on Thursday, my best friend, Alistair, called to tell me he was getting a divorce. His exact words were, "That woman has been cheating on me. I've thrown her out of the house, and I'm sure she'll end up spending the night at your place." Now, Kathy staying at my place wasn't unusual. She and my wife, Maria, often stayed with each other whenever one of us was traveling. If I was away, Kathy would stay with Maria, and if Alistair was gone, it was the reverse. We were like four peas in a pod, friends since high school. The thought of either of us cheating on our spouses was unimaginable. I travel for work about 2 weeks each month, and although I try to bring Maria on trips whenever possible, it doesn't happen often. Realistically, I'm the one with the most chances to stray, but I haven't, not once. He told me that he decided to visit my house, where Kathy and Maria were staying, early in the morning to have breakfast with them, and upon reaching there he found a man having breakfast with the two of them. As he observed from the patio, he could see Kathy and the man being all amorous with each other. Maria was laughing and talking with the man as if he had been a friend all her life. The best part was that Kathy was sitting in the man's lap as they had breakfast, and he was dressed only in boxer shorts. Now, I am not a prude, if anything, but to hear that a man was sitting on my breakfast table in his boxer shorts when I was away was a little too liberal for me. I would not take kindly of it was Alistair, who I trust with my life, so taking this in my stride was very difficult, to say the least. But, before anything, I had to get the whole story. As I entered the house, I saw Kathy sitting in the living room watching television as if nothing was wrong. Maria was nowhere to be seen, but since her car was in the garage, I was sure she was home. "Hey Kathy, how are you?" I asked her as if I knew nothing about what had happened. "I am all right. How was Trip?" "Maria is in the shower, and she should be down shortly." I sat down on the couch and took my shoes off. "How is Alistair?" "The a-hole has not called me the whole week. We were to play golf this weekend. Do you know if it is still on?" Kathy answered my question vaguely. "If he has not called to cancel it, I am sure it must still be on." Maria came down shortly and surveyed the situation before welcoming me and asking me if I wanted breakfast. As we went to the kitchen, Maria told me that Kathy and Alistair had a fight due to some misunderstanding and Kathy would be staying with us till Alistair came to his senses. "He better come to his senses," I said and whipped out my cell phone. I dialed Alistair and asked him to come over. He protested at first, but when I insisted, he agreed. You see, he has implicit faith in me too. After keeping the phone down, I finished the breakfast. Maria, meanwhile, had gone to the living room, and I could hear an animated discussion going on there. As I stepped into the living room, I could see that Kathy was on the verge of crying. Maria turned to me and said, "You should not have called Alistair. Kathy is not sure if she is sure to face him. It is not our place to meddle in their affairs." "I am not meddling in their affair. When you took Kathy in after Alistair threw her out, it was out of concern. What I am doing is also out of concern. After all, it is only a misunderstanding. I am sure that we will all be having a laugh about this before the day is over," I retorted. Just then, the doorbell rang and I opened the door and asked Alistair to come in. As he entered the living room, Maria and Kathy stood up. As we settled, I asked Alistair what the misunderstanding was. The only misunderstanding that I know of was in the mind of Kathy. Kathy misunderstood how I would react after learning that she has been hanging horns on me for about a year. Come on, don't be crazy. Kathy would never do such a deceitful, disgusting thing ever in her whole life. I was going to milk the occasion as much as I could. Kathy could use some comeuppance now. You remember how she reacted when you had a dance with the busty blonde when we were on vacation in Hawaii? Someone who has such low tolerance for a third party would never be a party to a cruel and hurtful thing. Moreover, I continued, Maria would nip it in the bud even if Kathy had such an idea. Maria would not just sit around and watch as your dreams are trampled and the lives of your children are set adrift on a leaky boat in a stormy sea. I turned to Kathy. "Why aren't you saying something?" Alistair interjected. "How will she say anything, Ben? I have evidence. I have photographs of her sitting on the lap of man wearing a boxer short." He took out his cell phone and showed me the first picture. "This is my house." I thundered for effect and turned towards Maria. "Will you let me know what misunderstanding has caused Alistair to throw Kathy out?" Maria stood quietly. She had no answer to offer. "Where were you while this was going on?" "She was right there, talking to them and serving them breakfast," Alistair informed. "And where was your stud?" I asked Maria. She gasped as her eyes widened. She suddenly realized my line of thinking and spoke up, "There is no one. Believe me, Ben, I have never ever been with another man. I could never cheat on you. I respect you too much and love you too much to do anything like this." It was only Kathy who used to have her lover over, and believe me that I protested. I could not rat on my best friend, so I kept quiet. "I have no reasons to believe you. Even if I do believe you, why should I live with someone who condones such blatant disregard for marital vows? I looked at Kathy, who was crying hysterically, and then at Maria and said, I hope you have a third friend who is more accommodating because tonight neither of you are sleeping in this house. I am not saying that it is end of the line for my marriage, but it does look like it. Kathy, I hope and pray that Alistair never so much as looks at you again. He is young, and he will have no problem finding a suitable person to spend his life with. Even you will be able to find a man who believes in open marriage, if this stud of yours doesn't work out. Now, it was the turn of Maria to shed some tears. Alistair and I will be at the golf course till 4 in the evening. When we return you better be gone, with this cheater. So, this is it? You would not even ask for the reason why I cheated? Kathy asked. Will it make any difference, Kathy? What is lost, and that is my trust in you and my trust in my ability to keep you happy. Do you really want to have a husband who will be checking on you every single moment of your life? I know you will say right now that you will not mind it, but in a few years when your guilt will be lesser you will feel caged and my mistrust would make you run away. Let's break it clean so that I can move on. Kathy and Maria stood speechless as we walked out. Maria must have been wondering what hit her. If she had actually not cheated, the price she was about to pay for a character flaw was enormous. Let's check the story from Maria's side. I sat wondering what just happened. I had done nothing wrong. I was not the one who was cheating. How could this happen to her? All that I am guilty of was supporting my friend at a time when I should not have. As I packed my overnight bag, my heart was breaking. Never in 1,000 nights did this dream come to me that I would be in a situation as hopeless as this. There was no doubt in my mind that the marriage would survive if Ben gave me a chance to explain things. However, survival of the trust and ease in the marriage was under severe doubt. Kathy was no help in the state that she was. I had to decide where to go, and I decided on a small motel, not too far from my house. It was a nice, comfortable motel, but sleep was far from my eyes. I just kept crying thinking about how stupid I had been. While I was not very enthusiastic about Kathy cheating on Alistair, I had gone along after Kathy convinced me that she was still in love with Alistair and was doing it just for a little thrill. The rationale did not go well with me, but I strung along because I would not dare to let Kathy meet Simon at a motel where the chances of her getting caught and hurting Alistair were more. I could of course think of a million reasons why Ben would not trust me. I had, after all, been hiding such a big secret from him. I was an accessory to the adultery and would be tried such in the court of life. I had no clue what would happen to me. We have no children and Ben has no reason to stick with me if his faith is shaken. I know Ben better than anyone in this whole wide world. For him, words like loyalty, honor, love, promise are not just words. They are the basics on which a man's dignity rides. He would never give you a false word, and he would never deceive anyone. My straight as an arrow Ben would look at this incident as a betrayal of his belief in me, and also that of Alistair. In the morning, I tried calling Ben, but he never picked up the phone. For me, it was imperative that I got hold of him. I called up his office only to be told that he had taken a week's leave and was away from the town. I tried calling up Alistair to explain matters to him, but it was futile as well, although Alistair did pick up the phone once, but he hung up as soon as he realized that it was I. Meanwhile, Kathy was inconsolable. Her marriage had ended without any ray of hope left. Kathy never did study beyond high school because of the death of her parents. Being all alone in the world after their death, she was taken care of by Alistair's parents, who were not too rich to begin with. They did take good care of her, but could not afford to send her to college or arrange for any higher education for her. Since Alistair was an extremely good provider, she never did need to work, but I worked all my life despite the fact that Ben was a very successful guy. Now, Kathy had nowhere to turn to. All that she would have to live on would be the money from settlement after divorce. She had no skills apart from cooking that could get her a job. I tried to be positive for the first 2 days and still hoped that once Ben felt he had punished me enough, he would come back. That positive attitude vanished as soon as I was served with divorce papers. The reason listed was incorrigible difference. For more than 8 years, I've invested my heart and soul into my marriage and have tried to be a good wife to him. I was not just his wife, I was also his best friend. Of course, there have been highs and lows as in any relationship, but we fought with and for each other to stay together, and we're planning to do that forever. Ben is a loving and caring husband and an extremely good lover. So why did I lie to him? Well, technically I did not lie to him. All I did was not tell the truth. I can understand how his relationship with Alistair was put under test here. If our marriage survived, his friendship would not. Alistair could never bear to look at my face again. Not just Alistair. All of Ben's friends would look at me as an individual who condoned adultery. My social life was going to change drastically no matter what the outcome. I called up Ben after receiving the divorce papers, and surprisingly, he picked up the phone. I need to talk to you. I think you are taking it a little too far. If you talk to me, it would become clear to you. I begged him for an opportunity to talk. If nothing else, I deserve a few minutes of your time. Why don't you come over to the house? We can talk over a coffee. He sounded calm, and that was something that I could see as a positive sign. Maybe, just maybe, he was through tormenting me and would give in after a bit of groveling on my part. Let's check the story from Ben's side. I did not know what to do, honestly. This lie was not something we could not get past. After all, she was not the one who was cheating. My problem was not with her lies. It is not like I have never lied to her. Spouses speak convenient lies to each other all the time. My problem was not that at all. My problem was with the moral stand that she had taken. If she had kept Kathy's indiscretion a secret and worked on breaking her habit of chasing after unsuitable men, that would have made sense to me. That would have made great sense to me, and I would have respected that. How was I to respect what she had done? I was lost in these thoughts when Maria's car came to a stop in our drive. She stepped out of the car and waited for a moment before walking towards the main door. She was modestly dressed. At least she was trying to subvert the whole conversation with her sexual charm. I waited for her to walk in the door, but she stopped and rang the bell. I guess she was more unsure of me than I was. My plan was to unsettle her as soon as she came in. That was not required. She had a tear in her eye and was looking lost. Despite her best attempt to look composed, I could see that she was barely holding herself together. Thank you for meeting with me. She spoke in almost a whisper as we sat down. I would like to hear your rationale behind lying to me. I am most interested in knowing how can you justify that this day forward you've ruined everything that we have worked for in the last 8 years. She slowly but sternly started speaking. I have done nothing wrong for our marriage. Yes, I have broken your trust, but I have not broken any of my marital vows. I still respect you and love you with all my heart. I have not once doubted your or my devotion to this marriage. What I am guilty of is a bad judgment when it came to an affair in which I was not a party. I am guilty of hiding something from you that most women would have hidden from their husband anyway. She is not the first woman we know who has cheated, and almost in all the cases I have known about the affairs much before you have. You never questioned why I did not disclose it to you as soon as I found out. You were just not into these things. She paused for a moment and then went on. I know this was different for you because Alistair is a very close friend of yours, but you have to realize that Kathy is a very close friend of mine. I have not condoned her affair, but I had to do something to keep this affair a secret while I tried to make Kathy see some sense. If she would have met her boyfriend at some motel, then the grapevine would have reached Alistair's ears, and I did not want that to happen. Whatever I was doing was the best course of action in my opinion. Had I known it would cost me so dearly, I would have left Kathy and her sordid affair alone. Despite all my efforts, I had not been able to break Kathy's affair. I guess Alistair did not satisfy her in the bed at all. That is what she said when I asked her why this was even necessary. She did promise me that when this affair would run its course, she would go back to being a faithful wife to Alistair. All that I wanted to do was save their marriage one way or the other. As she paused, I realized that, in her own way, she was trying to do what she supposed was best for Kathy and Alistair. My lack in faith was just that, my lack in faith. It was my faith that needed a reboot. I know what she did was wrong. She should have discussed it with me. She should have kept me in the loop. Was I ready to throw a perfectly good marriage over her half-baked idea about Kathy's affair? I don't think so. What I was sure of was a very pissed-off Alistair when I would tell him tomorrow that I was asking Maria to move back in. In his eyes, she was guilty by association. I'm not sure if I disagree with him. All I know is that I am way too selfish to let Maria slip away just to satisfy Alistair. I had asked, essentially, that Maria put out marriage ahead of her friendship with Kathy. Shouldn't I be doing the same by keeping our marriage ahead of my friendship with Alistair? I doubt that many of you would call Maria a culprit. She was a victim of her own botched-up design, but she was not a culprit by any stretch of imagination. Maybe this will come back to bite me in the butt, but I will be looking actively into that possibility. I am still not sure how loose her moral fibers have become in the push and pull of Kathy's affair. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.